accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Acclamations, Chief, it's all yours.
That was quick. Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. Last month's commission meeting, there was discussion around the Marine unit, and the impetus for that was certainly the traffic, the boating crashes that we had, the serious one, and then the tragic fatality one that we had shortly thereafter, not far away, which was right up against one of our seawalls in town. So that renewed some interest in conversation in the Marine unit. We heard that here. We heard that from residents also. I think you heard some of the same sentiments that we heard, and understandably, and started the conversation again. And you, at that meeting, asked for some information about a Marine unit, and that's what we have here for you today. We did some research and really started with looking around us, talking to everybody from FWC to all the other municipalities with Marine units, what they do, what their role is, their responsibilities, the feasibility of doing it, costs, fundings, all aspects of what would need to create a Marine unit for our town. We spent some time with the other municipalities. Sheriff's office was good, took us out in our community along the intercoastal, gave us some insight into that. We spent time with Hillsborough Beach. A lot of you are familiar with that. South of us, smaller, half the population, Marine unit for, I don't know, more than a decade or so. So we spent a half a day down there with them, going out, understanding what it entails if we were to do something like this. So this is what you're going to see. We talked about it, and some of the renewed interest in why. You can see what Florida is, our boating, what's going on, the accident, the fatalities. You can see the numbers, how they've increased it. We've heard this sentiment from FWC. Boating deaths will be included in these statistics now come for the 2021 year when we go through this. You look at us here, this is Highland Beach, the intercoastal waterway from Linton Boulevard on the north. You can see that to the south of Spanish River. What we have is that speed limit zone, not a no-wake zone. We have speed limits from now October 1 through May 31st is the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit for manatee season that we have here. And that's one of the signs from our ICW coming south from Delray Beach. So when you look at what we have here, I think some of the concern that's raised over the years from basically from Linton Bridge to Spanish River Bridge is a speed limit. Not a no-wake zone, not a slow-wake zone, a speed limit which allows vessels to go to that 25, 30 mile an hour speed limits during the year and higher. We can tell you that. We know that from a little bit of research that we did. And that becomes some of the challenge of what we're seeing, the speeds, some of the activity that goes on out there, and some of the conversation understanding we have. What I guess a little more concerned about is that we start to become a destination more than a pass-through because of that ability to use those boats and pull things and have all that kind of jet ski activity that you have in the intercoastal. And that's what we saw. Now we see some accidents from it. It's really generated some interest in the Marine unit. Everything in waterways, Fish and Wildlife Commission is responsible for. And this is what they're responsible for the whole state, just our 3 little mile stretch here. So you can see the responsibilities they have, the activities. They will be the first to tell you they do not have the resources to deal with everything that they have to deal with. They're overworked, and we'll tell you they're underpaid. So a lot of responsibilities. Why we don't see a lot of them, you can understand that they're stretched thin, and they'll admittedly tell you so. So they're the ones that are responsible for that waterways, and you can see, and everybody understands. Boca Raton has a Marine unit, has boats, and they do patrol that. We do get some coverage up to about half the city that comes through the town from Boca Raton. Delray Beach does not have a marine unit. They're talking about re-implementing one. It's been maybe a decade since they've had one. They are looking at the same thing because of the issues. So there could be some on the horizon, but they do not. So if we were to implement a marine unit, this is what places like FWC relies on the municipalities with their assistance. And when we did our research, we really found we're one of the actually few municipalities in this county that doesn't have a marine unit. I think out of 16, 17, and we were 3 or 4 of them that do not have a marine unit. So many of them bigger, some even smaller than us that do have a marine unit responsibilities with that. These are the things that we would need to consider if we were going to do a marine unit for the town. Vessel, dock, personnel, training, equipment, policy and procedure, maintenance, and certainly our accreditation standards that we would need. To do that, we have to have the authority. This Florida state statute gives us the authority to enforce and have all the same regulatory responsibilities as the Fish and Wildlife Commission. And they rely on their partners and the municipalities and the other entities to assist them in all these. Certainly the piece that you need to have a marine unit is, of course, a vessel. So some of our research that we did into, you can see the vessels that are made and built purposeful for law enforcement. These are not conversions. These are not fishing boats or pleasure boats that are converted after the fact. They're purposeful built. So you can get an idea of some of the better ones and the various ones that are used throughout the country. You can see what we obviously focused in on is the first one, a fluid marine. Number 1, because it's local. Number 2, because of the cost. And number 3, delivery time. It's certainly a viable option if that's something we were to look at right now for a vessel. They are local. This is in Fort Lauderdale. We went down and looked at their factory. That boat on the bottom is actually one that's ready to go. The twin 225 Hondas that are on that, they're building that now and told us that's ready for them. They make these boats everything with just what's needed for law enforcement. There's no other frills. There's nothing else added. Aventura has the same boat. It's deployed in Aventura. It's now deployed in Hollywood. And you can see everything on there is meant for a law enforcement purposes only. Clean deck. These are rigid hull, inflatable hull boats. Kind of desirable ones for law enforcement. If you think about what they're required to do, there's a lot of contact with other boats that you have to come in contact with. That inflatable hull is what allows them to get up alongside those boats without causing damage to somebody else's boat. That's the last thing you want with some of the fiberglass and some of the cost on some of these expensive boats. So it's certainly a more user-friendly purpose for what law enforcement does. We actually went down to Aventura. We drove the boat, that's 10-0, and put it through some tests. Certainly that's something that they're capable of doing. They've had theirs almost 3 years and rave about it. Couldn't be happier with the vessel that they have, and a great proponent of that company. If we were to do something like this, part of what we have to do is the maintenance. We've talked to the Honda authorized dealer right here in Boca Raton. Certainly very agreeable, willing to do any work that we would need to do and service any engines for a Honda engines for a vessel. So that's something we would need in place and have in place. Fuel, fortunately, right past Linton Boulevard, there's a marina that has fuel. We've looked at that. We've looked at other delivery models. So certainly whatever most cost effective, if there's something that were to be implemented, we can do. Once you have a boat, you have to have a dock. Certainly plenty of docks in town, in our town. We've had conversations with some of our condos, some homeowners. There's some viable options for us. Unknown if that would be long-term and ideal, but we've talked to other municipalities. They've done some MOUs with different associations, different opportunities. So that's not 100% yet, and that's something you'd certainly have to think about and look at as we move that forward. Where would we keep that? Back at town, the town manager discovered that there's a conservation easement. Thank you. A conservation easement that's along the back of the property. But through working through DEP, they've informed us that a dock could be built there, a lift could be built there. So that's something that down the road that could be an option for the town as if a police boat and a dock were to be needed and put there. Training that needs to go on. This is something that if you were to do something like this, every agency, specific training. There's a selection process, there's criteria. You don't just say, I want to go out on the boat. Number one, you need to know how to swim, and you need to have some of this training. We know the Coast Guard puts on some training, Sheriff's Office, different entities that would have various components of training that we can latch onto, and that's something we'd have to do. We know that just internally, we have at least half the department that is interested in being a part of the Marine unit and having some of this training. That's something that we would have to look at. Certainly, we would have a mission as a Marine unit and our focus on education, enforcement, and boater safety. That's why we're out there, creating that safe environment on the waterways as we do out on roadways. Our policies that we would have that would govern that, we would need accreditation status. We're an accredited agency. We would need to meet their standards of accreditation as we work through that. And the big one, the costs. So looking at the vessel we just looked at, you're in that $165,000 range. Equipment that would need to go on board to start up, we're looking at approximately $8,000 between life vests and the various things that have to go on a police boat that aren't already equipped with it. Initial costs. Looking at costs through an agreement with the Honda dealership, that would probably cover everything, $16,000, and that might be on the high end. But we know that they'll do all of our oil changes, any service. They will come take the boat out of the water for us. There's a lot to that. You have to remember, you buy a brand new boat, purposeful boat for police work, everything's covered for those first 3 years. So we've heard varying stages of cost from the different departments. Some of those boats are 17 years old. So it just depends, and they've been converted from a pleasure boat to a law enforcement boat. This is a brand new police boat if we're looking to do that, and you can understand everything will be covered in the first 3 years. Personnel costs as we work through this, talking to all the other municipalities, they're all done on a range of what they have. Ideally, to have one person that's your point person that is responsible for everything that goes on, is responsible for the care and maintenance of the boat, which is important, and the coordination of everything that happens around that. But obviously, that person is not going to work every weekend, every holiday, and those things. And that's those peak times is when we want to be out there, is when you want to see it out there. So we do need that multiple people trained. Those things will take time. Every department does a little something different, depending on the size of them. Some have a full-time person, some have part-time, some have people that are in their rotation that do. Ideally, we'd like to do all of that. It just depends on that personnel that comes to us, the experience, the training that we're able to provide. Those things we'll have to work through. And dock space. So that's going to be our concern as we move forward. Can we find a dock if we wanted to start that? I think we can. I think there's people willing to donate dock space right now. But those are things that we'd have to have our T's crossed and our I's dotted to say this is something we're ready to do. because it's not a car. We can't park it in the back parking lot. So that's going to be some of the challenges moving forward. What we've learned is there's a lot of funding out there for these marine units once you get involved and get in that arena. And all those municipalities, all those other entities we talked to have taken advantage of all of these funding sources that are out there. Grant money, Homeland Security, Stone Garden, all those pieces that when you're protecting your waterways, you're a part of, you have a vessel, you become part of this whole piece, and that money is diversified and shared around. You can see the Florida Inland Navigation District. Their awards that they put out. You can see everybody that's taken advantage of that. Most of them are 50%. When you're buying boats, vessels, docks, when you need those type of facilities, you see the money that's kind of that's spread around, and that's available. And we missed the cutoff for this year. It'll be next October for a vessel, but for a dock, for future things like that, replacing engines. You can see the municipalities that capitalize on some of the bigger projects where you see 50% funded, where some of those docks and boat ramps and things that are needed to be done. So that kind of money is out there. That's it. You know, I'll close with saying there has been a renewed interest. We've heard some of the same sentiment that you have from the community. What I will share with you is that we are prepared. If this is something that the commission, the community is saying is important to us and wants done, we are at a point where we're positioned and prepared to support that and do that if that's the desire of the commission and the community. Fortunately, right now, you all know Lieutenant Michael came to us earlier this year. I couldn't have said this last year, but earlier this year came to us from Lighthouse Point, commander down there in number 2 position for more than 2 decades in the department. And he oversaw their Marine unit. He has integral knowledge of what it takes, the responsibilities, all these things that go on that help find all this information out for us. So we are prepared to do that if that's something the commission thinks that the town is ready for.
Okay, thank you. Before we kick it around, just one quick question.
Yes.
If you were to get a go-ahead, how long would it take to get this operational?
I think you see the availability of one of the local boats that are available probably by the end of the year, beginning of next year at some point. Then certainly it becomes the personnel that we'd have to prepare and train, and then working through dock space right now. So if there was an availability for a dock and we had a vessel, we would look to either hire full-time, part-time, or train up some of the people. We know we have people with boat experience that work for us, obviously operating a pleasure boat and then operating a law enforcement boat where you could be detaining people. Remember what you're doing. Once you're out there, you're responsible. You stop that boat, you're responsible for them, their safety, their boat, dealing with all the things you have to deal with on a boat in law enforcement. So there would be some training involved. It would be into next year, a couple months into it, I'm sure.
So you're thinking March,
I'm thinking by summer. Sure.
by the summer.
Maybe March, depends if all these things fall into place.
Okay.
You too.
John, moving on to you.
So I do have a few questions. You said a rigid hull inflatable. So I'm not familiar with the type of boat, but is it a fiberglass hull and surrounded by a rubber inflatable kind of balloon?
Correct.
And
It is.
and this inflatable is really hard, like material that's not going to be punctured easily and all that.
Not easily at all. It's I believe a 10-year, 5-year on the collar of that one.
You have
5-year
two-
warranty.
You have 2 engines on it. What size are they?
Twin 225 Honda motors
25.
for a 28-foot boat.
So that's about a 25, 30 mile per hour boat.
Yeah, it's gonna fly.
Oh, fast.
It's gonna fly, John.
It's a light boat. Yeah, it can go. It'll do what you need it to do. That vessel, all those vessels you looked at, that we looked at there, were purposeful built boats for law enforcement specifically.
Okay, so it'll go fast. I'm confused about fish, wildlife versus Corps of Army. Do the Corps of Army engineers, do they get involved in this at all?
Not that I know of. I don't believe they have an enforcement piece to the Corps of Army Engineers, law enforcement anyway. No.
So even changing the speed limits is not a core issue?
We've looked at that. We started the process. Ingrid has done some research into that possibility of that. We've seen where it's been difficult in other places. And we've heard that that's maybe not the solution. Certainly heard that from some of the sentiment from our own boating community. So something we would look at. And
I'm just
still
trying to
talk about.
understand, is it the Corps of Army engineers or is it the wildlife?
We've dealt with everything through Fish and Wildlife Commission, who has all responsibilities of waterways.
Okay, all right. The conservation easement that you mentioned behind the library, what does that mean? Who owns that land behind the library? The town or no?
Yeah, so we own the land. A conservation easement is a document preserving the mangroves at the rear of the property, but it does have a series of conditions in that permits for passive use. And we got clarification, thanks to Chief Hartman, that we could put a boat in a dock in. So we have the ability to put in our vessel there, if you will. But other things in that area we can't readily do. You can't cut all the mangroves down. You can't put up probably vertical revetments and stuff of that nature, but we could get a dock.
So speaking of docks, there's no chance that we could use one of the docks that Boca has that's not being used at all? Or are they even interested in having a conversation about that? Even if we were to rent one of their docks?
Apparently right now, there's not that availability. We have researched, we are researching with Delray and Boca of what's out there. So, and we've talked right here into town with some of our residents and some of the condos that have expressed some interest.
Well, and I've been obviously to Spanish River and I've seen their facility with their boats and whatnot. And I've seen Fish and Wildlife Commission is there with their boat. So don't Fish and Wildlife, don't they patrol along our section at all?
They do. They have been out here, but again, they're stretched pretty thin. They don't just cover this area and they don't just cover the county. So they can go south also when they leave Boca.
How fast were they able to respond to the deadly accident that we had?
On both crashes, Boca did have a Marine unit, or so at least we think somebody was on duty. They showed up to both crashes for sure in the water. Yes.
Okay. Last question then is, well, two questions. In terms of hurricanes, how would we protect the boat? You're not going to leave it at the dock. Are you thinking about including a trailer?
At some point we may, because the maintenance is able to trailer that boat. You know, the challenge here is we're confined by space. When you have a trailer, it has to sit someplace when the boat's not on it. Kind of limited here, right on our facility where we would keep that. We don't have to want to pay for storage or necessarily put that someplace else. So we have looked into that. We have identified some places that we believe we can get it off the island during a hurricane if we have to. And then we would have somebody trailer it and do it at that point, or somewhere down the road if we do have a dock that we are able to get a trailer and acquire one.
It would seem you would want to include the cost of the trailer, right? If we're going to go down this way, even if it's to pull it out for a storm, then you put it behind,
Correct.
Over by, behind town hall in the parking lot.
We get it off the islands, and so.
Then the other question is trailer, dock, hurricane, conservation, Corps. I guess that's it. I understand what you're trying to do. Thank you very much.
Mark, John, boats are left here in the water during a hurricane. They double line them and there are all kinds of procedures that you can go through. So while probably for a boat of this size and weight, it would be preferable to take it out as opposed to a boat
Right.
that's much heavier and will
Absolutely.
withstand a little more. But there are ways to do it. We can go into one of our little lakes where it's protected, and there are ways. As far as the speed, this boat doesn't have a big superstructure. So those engines are gonna let you go. You're gonna be able to catch up with somebody no matter how fast they're going out here. I think it's a terrific idea. I think we should definitely go forward with it. I think, yeah, we could see about renting from one of the local condos or from a homeowner who's willing to rent to us for a year, say, and then decide if we want to build our own dock, if it makes sense to do that. And I think that we should go ahead with this, maybe while looking about possibility of lowering the speed limit. But I think we may find that if we have a boat out there on a regular basis, we may not need to lower the speed limit, that people will adhere to it. And that's probably most of the problem, is that there's no one out there, so they're not watching how fast they're going. And they know that this area is not heavily patrolled. But if we're just going up and down 3 miles, then it's going to be pretty heavily patrolled. The costs seem to be reasonable, local. We don't want another accident like we had if we can possibly prevent it. So I am in favor of going ahead with this.
We keep talking about lowering the speed limit. There's no question there are pros and cons on that whole concept. And I know we're doing a lot of work on looking into that potential. But even if it ends up being lowered, not going to work unless we have enforcement. So whether it gets lowered or it doesn't get lowered, if it's a good idea, bad idea, we still need enforcement. So I don't know that that even enters into the thought process on should we or shouldn't we do this. Okay.
I was going to say, that doesn't enter into my thought process at
Okay.
all, because as you say, it's irrelevant.
Right.
You could tell them they can go 15 miles an hour, but if you don't have somebody out there enforcing it, it makes no difference what you do.
Yep. Okay. We all agree. Peg, moving on to you.
Thanks, Mayor. Can a commissioner take command of the boat? If she or he has a license?
I asked for that last time. Come on. I'll
Good
share it.
idea.
Just
We can
saying.
share. We can share.
Yeah. Okay. Can we water ski behind it? Just kidding. So seriously, this is great. I can't believe you found a vessel that's available in 60 days, because I know people who are looking to buy a craft of the similar size, and because of chips shortage, they're waitlisted a year, or they're told you can buy this, but you have to not acquire it for 1 year while it rotates through the boat shows in the country. True story. Regarding the speed limit, we were out on the boat a week ago Sunday, and there were 14 late Sunday, and there were 14 live aboard boats in Lake Boca and a good half dozen in Boynton Del Rey. And I know I have friends on the water in those towns who wish there were no speed limit, or no wake zones, so that they would not have to deal with people living on their boat, 50, 60 feet off their docks. So that needs to be considered as we talk about speeds. So wait, I had another question. Oh, there was also a real interesting near miss. Luckily, it was a miss where a boat passed our home while we docked. We are my house is the westernmost point of the town, literally mine and my next door neighbor. The boat passed us at a high speed, stopped just north of Belita where the Spanish River intersects, and threw a water skier in the water. And then the boat drifted away from the skier. Another boat's coming northbound, didn't see the skier, literally veered at the last minute because of the incoming tide and the current and all that. And that kind of thing. And then I would say 3 out of 5 boats were excessively speeding. Out of Lake Boca, they come north going home. 3 out of 5 probably were speeding. So I'm all in favor of this. I agree with Evelyn. It's like I had no holds barred on moving forward. I think it's a great idea. As you know, Chief, we talked about it years ago. And I think there would be many people in town who would volunteer their dock space. My question is, do we need a lift for the boat? Or is it, would would the hull wrap or whatever you call the wrap and be enough to maintain it? You know, that sometimes they get knocked around quite a bit on that direct water.
Yeah, and thank you. And a couple of things based on your comments. I think to begin with, we've always heard those anecdotal stories of what you just said. I think what really got people's attention over these last couple of months is these two serious and the tragic fatality boat accident. It got people talking like we haven't seen. So that's probably why we're where we are today right now with this. And you mentioned something that reminded me when you said volunteers. We've been approached that people want to volunteer to be on the boat. There are volunteer marine units in these other municipalities at the food truck event and some of the other things. We've already been approached but offered to people. We're a boating community. We've heard this from our community. You live here, you either own a boat or you go to the beach. That's why you're here. So we're hearing that kind of interest that they're willing to volunteer to be out there as a visible presence. Obviously, they don't have law enforcement capabilities, but they're out there in a presence and they're providing information and safety and security and all those things, education that they do in the other municipalities. It's a great way to have outreach and contact with your communities. And I will tell you, getting into this, it really put us in a communication environment that we haven't been in before. Once you're in that arena and once you have skin in the game in the water with these other municipalities and FWC, you're part of their networking, their educational, their cooperation. You give, you get, you're all part of that. So it really kind of opened our eyes at how much more there is. Some of the conversations we're having with our own residents that we weren't having before because we didn't have any interest or any responsibilities for any of the waterways. We have the intercoastal, we have the small canals, and we have the ocean too, which that's a boat that size would be out there to deal with some issues when we do have them. To answer your question, boat lift, yes. If you're on the intercoastal, you need a boat lift. And depending where you are, if you're in one of the small lakes there inside of Bellito, you're safe, you're protected. You're probably, it's probably great. Aventura's got a great floatable dock that they're on, but they're not right on the intercoastal waterway. So depending where you put that boat behind our facility here, you would need a lift to get that out of the water. Ideally, you want it out of the water, and especially if you're on the intercoastal. Sure.
Also, Chief, how does it work with regards to jurisdiction? Because as I understand it, I talked to an Army Corps guy, Marshall's first week on the job, actually. And the Army Corps technically owns the intercoastal waterway, not the side canals, but the FDEP oversees it on their behalf. And then the local jurisdictions, of course, have authority. But how does it work? Do we have the capability of writing speeding tickets? How do we interface with the other communities? Is there a
Correct.
mutual aid? How would that actual enforcement work on water as compared to land?
Yes, and that's the reason why I put that statute up there. So that statute gives all municipalities, any other entity besides FWC, all of those same regulatory responsibilities and authority to be able to enforce that, abandoned boats, all the things that FWC deals with, you can also deal with based on that statute and the vessel. And yes, you'd have mutual aid, you'd be able to work together. And that's what we heard. A lot of communication that goes on with the marine units that we're kind of not part of now because we don't have that. So, and I think that's been the value where we've already learned just from this process. Creating the marine unit would put our officers in that same environment. Our boating community, our residents talk to us about that. They want that kind of information. We want to be able to share that, educate, and do those things in this community also.
And one last thing, the most often I see the FFW boat, the Florida Fish and Wildlife, is near the Boynton Inlet. And it's there so often between the Two Georges restaurant and the inlet and the bridge there. You know, you're supposed to be no wake at any bridge, but I believe possibly because that inlet there's not another entity there, and it's a very dangerous inlet. It was basically dredged just to allow water to escape Lake Worth, not to really access boats. So I saw them last Sunday and the Sunday before that. They seem to hover there, and I don't see them down this way, but Boca does patrol behind us, and quite often I see them enough on weekends. So great job. I'm kind of I'm happy to move forward with the rest of my commission on this as soon as we can.
Have you thought any more about the hours of the patrol that you would have?
Sure. And that's something that we would want to have increased hours, whether it comes through, you'd have to have multiple people. One person cannot be on that boat the whole 40 hours a week that they work. And they don't work every weekends. So as we develop the personnel, just like the other municipalities, you find those people that you train them, that have the availability and that you can put them on the boat, the accessibility to the boat, how easy can you get on and off and get up and down and be able to get back to a dock to where it's maybe just certain timeframes, peak days of the weeks, holidays, those type of things. It does us no good if they're not.
But are you
If it sits
thinking it
on
would
the
just
lift.
be the weekends
Oh, no.
or like
No, I'd imagine you'd want your boat out there moving, going up
Every
and down the
day?
intercoastal.
a certain
Maybe
number?
not 8 hours a day, maybe not 10 hours, just depends. Depends on your time of year, day, the weather. All those things, just the visibility, the interaction with the boating community out there, motor safety checks, all things you can do. People know that they're going to come through your area. They're going to see a marine unit boat.
And would you only have one person on the boat or would there always be? Two.
Most places only have one, depending if it's a night, if they're doing night operation stuff, then they'll put two. But most places, one person on a boat.
Mhm. Okay. And then I guess you'd have to notify our insurance policy. That's another additional.
Correct. We've already talked to finance director. He's looking at that right now.
I mean, would you ever be expected to tow anybody? Like, would that be part of?
That could very well be part of something. Certainly you're cautious when you're dealing with anybody else's vessel, and there's requirements and regulations for that too. But there's stranded vessels that happen. People that have been thrown over in their coastal, we've gotten calls about it. And we call to see what boats are available. Rescue, those type of things. You know, you have a fire department, there's rescue divers, there's things that in the future that could potentially would be involved in. Sure.
And when you said a lot of the coastal communities already have a marine, do they also have fire rescue? Like, how many of them have a fire rescue boat as opposed to?
The only
police?
thing that we saw, I think, was Tequesta had some kind of shared, it's kind of vague, but there's some kind of police fire piece to it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's more common to just have more of a police boat as opposed to a fire
Sure,
rescue.
because you're the one doing the enforcement of boating safety type things. Yeah. You have a piece that can connect, that can put out any type of fires on the waterway if you need it. So
Mhm,
these boats has attachments for that.
mhm, mhm. Or the medical component of it, rescue component of it.
Correct. You
too.
see the spine board that's in the overhead of that you're able to rescue people, get people out of the water, that
Mhm,
type of thing.
mhm.
So and there's training on specific training on all those type of things.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm in favor of it as well. So I'd be interested in moving forward, whatever we have to do. That's it.
Mayor, could I just ask one more question as a follow-up?
Certainly from a manatee perspective and protection, this is going to get a lot of support. In terms of funding, I was thinking federal. How could we justify federal? Do you see any chance to involve the concept of on Oceanside, because of drugs that you have recovered that have landed on our shore, that this could also be part of not only safety, but drug law enforcement?
Sure. And that's part of some of that funding through Homeland Security that supports that type of thing, because they may call on you if need be. And we've had that. We had them interdicted here right off the coast. So now you're in that information sharing arena with a Marine unit and that's why they fund you. So there is funding for overtime, for additional hours. And then you see some of the funding for your equipment, that kind of support.
So
Sure.
that's.
And we will pursue all that, like all
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
we were competing with all agencies. What's good for us, I think, is some of these, as a first time application, you're probably guaranteed that funding. We understand you're guaranteed because we haven't gone over and over again for some fundings, especially if we're looking at considerable money for a dock, that there could be a 50% match with that.
So how many times do you think you have recovered drugs that have floated ashore over the course of the last couple of years?
That gets reported to us many times. I think the biggest one we had was 25 kilos, and then we had several bales that wash up store. We get it.
It's a big deal.
There's always.
Yeah, I mean, if we just sold that, we'd be taking care of it.
Yeah, I can pay for the fire station.
You want to take that assignment? You all set?
Very good. Thank you.
Chief, would you just expand a little bit on the accreditation portion that you had listed up there? What's involved? How long does it take? Is it critical? Do we need it?
It's just meeting their standards. It's like everything else that we have, that we do, whatever we implement, whatever we have. Creating a boat and a whole nother piece to this marine unit, there's accreditation standards. Nothing that we can't meet. We would just make sure that we're in compliance, whatever the state regulatory process is and the accreditation portion of having a marine unit.
Got you. Okay.
No problem there.
You had looked at I'm going to call it a raft. Actually, Peggy brought it up also. It was a way to get the boat out of the water, but not have to wait to actually raise it up. You just drive it on.
Sure.
And then when you're taking it out, just stick it in reverse, boom, take it right off. Have you had a chance to look into that?
Yeah, it's very impressive. You see it, one of the photos that Aventura has that.
Okay.
They're fortunate they have it tucked away from any type of waves that could occur and off the waterway. And it's an ideal type of thing. It raises you up out of the water. It's easy to get up, off and on, and it's very quick. If you're in a coastal, it's not ideal.
Right.
Because
Depends
you're
on
still
which-
going to catch all that.
Yeah, it depends on the
sideways.
slip.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Obviously, everybody's in favor of moving to the next step on this, so we need to define what the next step is. Okay. I would like to see an estimate on what your 12-month running costs are going to look like. You know, that's personnel, a little bit of added insurance cost, I guess that wouldn't be much. What your ongoing training is, throw a number, what the fuel cost is going to be, that won't be that much for outboards. But we need a 12-month run rate. I'm sure we're all committed to it, not going to be that outrageous. Might not be a bad idea to put a deposit on the boat if we need to give you some type of a motion and a vote to do that at this point, so it doesn't get away from us. Is that necessary?
I
Do
don't
you have a
think so.
concern?
We will talk to them. We visited them, and they know that there was a definite interest. We will revisit them with them after this meeting and see what they
Okay.
say.
So I could bring something back to your next meeting if they're looking to move forward. We can put some type of budget resolution together to make that happen. And then that would definitely put the wheels in motion, or the propeller in motion, propeller in motion.
Well, I think
To
from
get this
the,
off, get this going.
I think the commission, unless anybody disagrees, would be ready to make a formal motion to move forward on the whole project. If we can get a proposal from you on what you think the run rate's going to be on this.
So we could get that. Linnell, when's our next meeting? Is that the 9th of November? Yeah, so by November 9th, I think we could have a budget amendment proposal, kind of a layout of what that looks like, and then some type of authorization us to move forward with fluid. Is that what they're called? Fluid boats to get our hands. I got a stronger impression that they were going to hold it for you till this meeting. So I think we have a good shot at securing that vessel and getting it here in 60 days. So,
Okay.
but then we'll have to call our friends to make sure we can find a place to put it. So
Okay. Now,
right away.
also, Peggy has suggested that whatever community gives the slip, that they might want to be donating the slip, not charging the town for it. I think that's very appropriate. I can speak for our community. If you end up selecting a slip from our community, we will donate that. I mean, I'll certainly have to talk to our board about it, but I don't think anybody would object. And I think any other community should be doing that as well. And I think we as a commission might want to ask that whatever other community you select. Certainly somebody's backyard, can't talk for that, but any community, they shouldn't be charging for that. Okay. I think that's all I had. The $16,000 maintenance, I agree, sounds super high, being that it's covered under warranty, but better high than low. The other thing on the 9th, if you can give us a better guesstimate on when you think we can start operating.
Okay.
We won't hold you to it, it's just a plan, but I think we need to get some feel for that. Okay.
Got it.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to see on the 9th?
So.
Is this on the 9th?
Right, on the 9th.
Okay.
Is there some feeling that we can get that approval for a slip in writing from an organization that would allow that? I think it's important that we have it in writing.
Yeah, once he selects where
Sure,
he wants to
Of
go.
course.
And I,
We would
yeah,
need an MOU.
and I think it's important that we do see, a breakdown of the costs on a run rate on an annual basis, because we're seeing, what it could cost, but it's not.
Yeah, I know, we know the
And
chief,
it's a
he'll
little,
come
it's a
back
little
with a good
tough. We've
plan.
talked to multiple agencies. Everybody's a little different. So it depends on what you have, what you're using, years on your boats. So it's been tough to get an exact cost for you, but we can narrow this down
Well,
and get.
we'll
to
be
it.
flexible, you know.
Yeah.
We just need to get a sense of what we're approving, that's all.
And the last point would be, at least from my perspective, in terms of timing, you had mentioned about timing, and I don't see where this is an emergency. So that, you can take the time now, and even if it means next summer, or before fall of next year when it's in season again,
I
that we
disagree.
have this resolved.
I disagree. I think the sooner the better. I would put a push on it. I mean, every day that we're not out there is another day something can happen.
Well, there's no way anything's going to be operational before February, March anyway, which is beyond the season.
Well, when did the accident happen where we had a loss of life? Wasn't in season.
That's true. But it also didn't involve any enforcement issues.
Well, I don't know how fast that boat was going. But my only point is, yes, there's more traffic in season, totally with you, and a more likelihood of a problem. But I think the sooner we get this going, the better. And if we can get it going sooner, then there's more experience built up before season. I don't see a reason not to push. And you know me, I want everything done yesterday anyways.
Yeah, in this case, I'm honestly thinking that, look, we've gone a long time without any coverage whatsoever. To take 6 months, take your time, get the costs down, get everything covered, all of the points needed to support a fully manned and operational system for, marine operation. I don't know, given timing and all, that it has to be, February, March versus even, end of August, September.
My guess, it'll be somewhere in between. Because there's a couple things we don't know yet that have to fall in, but I think our biggest thing would be the acquiring the boat. Because there is a lot of lead times. Those are just 3 vendors. There's some that are 18, 24 months out.
Yeah, well, this boat we're going to
Yeah.
have in 60 days. So
If it's the right
you-
boat,
you've
and if
taken-
that
you've
is
taken-
absolutely going to satisfy your requirements, not jump at it just as hey, because it's available.
Listen,
Understood.
we're kind of like smoking dope here. He's already decided what boat he wants. So that boat is not the critical path anymore.
Right?
Critical path is the personnel, the training, et cetera. And whatever time, the chief is not going to do anything he's unhappy with on a time basis. We know him well enough. So he's going to take whatever time he needs to take. I would be very unhappy if it wasn't until next fall. Okay. But we'll live with whatever chief needs to do, whatever time he needs to take.
I'd like
Even
to
if you're
ask
very unhappy.
John a question.
Yes, even if I'm unhappy. So
Did you
be
hear
it.
that, chief? You now have a permission to make him very unhappy.
John, what could they come back with that would make you not want to go forward with this?
I am not against doing it. I'm only in favor of doing it in a methodical, comprehensive way that is done with enough time to get it done right and not treat it as a super priority, even though we've had a recent accident that, is slapping us in the face.
We're debating an issue that doesn't require a debate.
Well, I
It's
just
in
wonder,
chief's hands.
I guess I do wonder if you did put it in private property or, you know, condo property, is there any issues with law enforcement using that property to access the boat and dock the boat? And
Yes.
I guess I'm also wondering, like, from an insurance perspective, would our, you know, the insurer
Liability.
make any requests for things that might take time to get up and run? I mean, I just don't even know.
And you pose the same questions we've been working through in just a short couple of weeks.
Right.
And that's why it's not all black and white and the specifics of those things. So
Right.
we are feeling our way through the same type of stuff.
I would think that even if it's a donated dock, you still want a contract.
Right.
Because for, among other things, you want to be sure you've got it for a year
Right.
and that each side knows what the responsibilities are
Yeah,
to
and you
each
need
other.
some
So there
consideration.
will
and
be,
There would
right,
be a dollar charge or
you
$100
know,
charge.
but there would be a legal document that would tell you what everybody has to do.
Right.
We've got a memorandum of understanding with one association already with our license plate recognition cameras.
Oh,
It's on their
okay.
property.
So you've
So
done
these
that kind of
things-
thing before?
yeah,
Okay.
Graciously that they've allowed us to do that. So we have understanding of whose responsibilities for what costs and everything.
Does Glenn have anything to say on this?
Mayor, could I throw out another enforcement angle that is often skipped over? If you notice that sign of the speed limits posted, which is posted throughout the intercoastal, the little print below states that a vessel may not come within 50 feet of shore with anything other than no wake. And that never happens unless you're a canoe or kayak or a paddleboard. So there's another area whereby our enforcement could assist and at the same time aid the manatees because they don't really swim in the middle of the intercoastal per se. They hug the sides. And so from my knowledge, I've been on the water 30 years here. So that would assist in the environmental protection angle as well. So that's something else that this boat can enforce.
Okay, we done? You've taken up enough of our time.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to public comments. Do we have anybody in the queue?
There are no public comments.
Okay, we'll close public comments. Move on to announcements, board vacancies. There is one for code enforcement for a 3-year term. Meetings and events, October 28th from 5 to 7 is the third and final food truck event. On November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is the referendum. So anybody paying attention that does not know to come and vote for the new fire department, November 2nd, 7 to 7 at the St. Lucy's Church. If you have any questions about it, visit the website, bocahighland.us, or give Marshall a call, or give me a call, or send me an email, dhillman@bocahighland.us, and we'll try to get you answers. Next town commission meeting is on November the 9th at 1:30, and on the 10th at 9:30 is a planning board regular meeting. There's a board action report on page 7. Deals with the September and October. This is board action report. So I believe if you take a look at that on page 7, deals with the planning board report. And in it, you'll notice on the bottom of page 7, there was a motion made by Mrs. Mendelson, seconded by DeMoss, where they are suggesting that there be a broader definition or a more comprehensive definition of swales in the upcoming ordinance that we're going to discuss, as well as a process for people to appeal a denial of a right-of-way permit. So we need to discuss that when we discuss the upcoming ordinance. Okay? Speaking of ordinances, if we can move on to page 12. The proposed ordinance is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the administrative amendments to the 7th 2020 edition of the Florida Building Code to provide for reinspection and recertification of existing threshold buildings, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability and codification, and providing for an effective date. Jeff, I see you're up there already. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
You got it. Thank you, Mayor. At the October 5th commission meeting, the commission continued the discussion regarding the building recertification ordinance. The commission appointed Commissioner David to work with Town Attorney Rubin to make substantive changes to the proposed ordinance, which is attached. Side note, I was not present. I was away on vacation during this period of time, so I'm also seeing a lot of this for the first time as of yesterday. Additionally, building official Remus added 3 years to the age of each building located on the east side of A1A to the recertification list, and the rollout of the program was reduced to 2 years by scheduling 2 buildings per month. The ordinance is again before the commission as a first read because of the modifications sought at the last meeting. And following the discussion, the second reading will be scheduled and properly advertised. Again, fiscal impact, the fees generated by the concrete restoration permits will cover the costs, so there'll be no costs incurred by neither either the town nor the buildings owners, other than their recertification, other than the work that's required. And we have a red line version, a clean version to look at, and also the building recertification list to review.
If it would help, I noticed that the red line, because it's a black and white version, does not show up. I can go make copies of the red line if it would help for your, yep, okay. I'll be right back.
Yeah, already.
Yeah, just take a 5-minute time out here. Maybe we'll take a 10-minute recess while those copies are made. Okay, why don't we do that? Okay, so 10-minute recess. You got it. Not yet. Okay, we're back. We have the redone piece. Thank you. John, let's turn it over to you.
Okay, Jeff. Not trying to be pedantic, I think is the word. In the first section, in general, and then you list the definitions of building age, building official, owner. I still think it is worth including a definition for special investigator because it is so unique. It's a term that most people have never heard of, unless it's for law enforcement. Now, that's not to say that you haven't given some definition to it embedded in the document. And I would, let's see, where is it on page? Yeah, page 5 of our handout, section B1 or BI, a certified special inspector of threshold buildings. Then you have kind of in parentheses, that definition. I think you could expand that also to include where they come from. If it makes any sense in terms of, you say registered in the state of Florida. I am also assuming that they'll be registered with your department with Highland Beach. No?
Well,
No. No, definitely no. They don't have to be registered with us.
Well, I thought at one point we had a conversation about them registering or firms.
They-
yeah, so we made a compromise. The commission wanted us to provide a list of local engineers and architects that were also licensed as special inspectors.
Yeah, and we said they can register with us.
And they said they could register if they choose to register with us, and we can share that, just like we register contractors for free.
Right.
And then we can provide that list. So as they do jobs, or if they choose to, they can call and just choose to register with us, knowing that that will put them on a list that we will just say, because we can't recommend anyone, but what we
Right.
could say is, here's public record of who is registered with us as a threshold inspector, as an engineer.
So again, a
They don't have
definition.
to. John, they don't have to register. with
I know
us.
that. I didn't say they have to. I'm suggesting that there is at least we can accommodate those who want to be registered, get registered, and that you will provide the list that's registered with us, that they volunteered to list with us. Not that we're requiring it,
Yeah, that's
not
good.
that we're in any way endorsing them, but that
Right.
and a list is available.
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, and that's what I'm suggesting that.
That doesn't go in an ordinance.
No, but I am suggesting that, well, you can say that those who have registered are available upon request.
Does not belong in an ordinance.
All right, well, I'm asking the question.
No, good question, valid question.
Yeah, that information will be available to them when they register with us, and we can provide that. But again, it's nothing that
Okay.
was placed in the ordinance.
Skipping, when I go to, on page 6, paragraph C, and I really like the way, the report, as you look towards the end of that paragraph on that page, the report must take into account 2 basic structural considerations: movement of structural components, et cetera, and 2, deterioration of materials, et cetera. It would seem that's pretty obvious that if you don't comply with that, you got big problems. So this begs the question, can we offer a pass-fail based on that alone?
Well, the town isn't making the determination of
No.
pass or fail. The engineers are.
But can you ask the engineer to decide whether it's a pass-fail? Just because if either one or both of those are not satisfactory, then it should be it's a fail.
It's going to be up to the engineering firm and the qualified special inspector to make the determination of the time frame for repairs, if, or if there's any temporary shoring that needs to go into place. We're finding it difficult to find engineers who are willing to call something safe or unsafe. They're willing to say if something is habitable, or this is a major structural deficiency that needs immediate attention, or this needs to be fixed, this can wait 6 months, and prioritize things. But I don't think that they're going to have a pass fail. They're going to make the recommendation for the time frame, which is really more important.
Yeah, to me, that's like an engineer who should know that, look, this thing's falling apart. But I've got to say it becomes almost political at that point, and not making a definite stand that says, look, this building is not safe, period, based on one of these two or both of these two criteria. And in my official opinion as an engineering specialist, it's failed, period. At least you should know that because you're the building official. And the reason why I bring that up is because later on, there is this view that it's the building official determines the report does not satisfy the requirements. Well, wait a minute. The engineer should already have made that decision.
No, that's, you're putting
Administratively.
you're putting apples and pears together.
Yeah.
Let's back up for a second.
Okay.
I love your pass-fail idea. However.
This is for discussion now.
No. I'm glad you brought it up. I truly love it, but I totally agree with Jeff. What Jeff has laid out here, which I totally endorse, is the reality of what an engineer is going to do here. The engineer, by saying this requires work in the next 6 months because it's going to cause a threat to
Structural failure.
life. He's basically saying it fails.
Right.
But what we need to know is how quickly the repairs are required. And that becomes that gray area of it's good for the next 2 or 3 years, or it's only good for the next 2 or 3 months. And I'm being extreme here on my example.
Mhm.
Okay. So, okay, you didn't fail for the next 3 months, but you kind of failed for the next year and a half. Well, nobody knows the answer. Nobody really knows that. So what we need to find out from the engineer is this imminent danger or not imminent danger?
And that's where I have a problem. I don't
So,
see
no,
where
let me
there's
finish.
clarity. in
So,
that.
so they're basically saying it passes or it doesn't pass. We're getting pass fail without them using that terminology.
I'm not sure I see it.
Because what they're reporting is imminent danger. You have to fix it quickly.
No.
In
what
your
I'm-
terminology, that's a failure. They're
No,
failing.
but I don't see them saying that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. I see an engineer saying, this is a problem and it should be addressed in the next 3 to 6 months. Well, wait a minute. What does that really mean? Well, it's a problem because it's about ready to fall down.
That means it failed long-term.
How about in the next 30 days?
Imminent danger, get out of the building.
Then why can't they say that? Why can't we expect, because I don't want a building official to then have to interpret that.
That is what they're going to say. We're going to get that report.
Do you see where I'm coming from, Jeff?
I think I do. And I also think that we're maybe we're not interpreting this the same way. What my job or any building official's job would be with this particular ordinance in place would be to verify that the reports administratively meet the requirements that we put in place. We're not, the building department, the building official, the town isn't going to take on the liability of determining whether, we're not here to decipher what the report means. We're here to make sure that the report lays out all of those items that we say it needs to lay out in order to show its compliance. And I also, know that the engineering community inherently likes to err on the side of caution, not just for their own license, but for their liability and the ability to sleep at night. So they're very, although we can find someone to rubber stamp something, the real issue is that these are professionals that are being hired. They want to have a good business and a good reputation. So they're going to make sure that things are done. And honestly, since more than likely they're going to be the ones who are going to spec out the repairs, you know, the more you find wrong, the more you have to spec out, the more money you're going to make. So it's already leaning in that direction. I'm not accusing, saying that they're going to find things that aren't problems, but they're the ones who are going to make the determination as to the condition of the building. And they're the ones who are taking on the liability. And we're simply just going to sit back and make sure that they administratively meet the requirements that we set forth.
I hear you, but at the same time, you look at Surfside and what happened there.
Bellevue Surfside, isn't it?
No,
Come
but
on,
I mean,
we all
over-
know that Surfside was a result of multitude of problems.
Of engineers who made statements but did not convey clearly the building was near collapse.
We know that a number of years, whether it was 3, 4, 5 years prior
Right.
to it falling down, the board wanted to do the work and they couldn't get the
The
residents to
approval,
go
I understand
for
that,
it.
but the engineers wouldn't make the statement that said, this building is in imminent collapse.
They weren't required by the town. Here, look, at all we can do is bring the camel to the water. We can't make the camel drink. Okay,
I
so-
want to know if the camel's going to die.
Well, the camel might die, but we can't make them drink it. Tom.
Well, wait a minute. So all I'm suggesting is if the building official determines the report does not satisfy the requirements, I'd rather have building official replaced by special investigator. Because the special investigator is basically casting a judgment on that
Right.
building.
John, you're looking at the wrong thing.
No, I understand.
When
It's
it,
the
no,
next
no,
paragraph.
when it says meets the requirements, that means the filing requirements, not the requirements for is this building good or not good, but have they filed all the things in their report that we want them to
I hear-
file. It's
I
just
hear
a
you.
filing. They're not determining whether the report is accurate or inaccurate. It's get us the papers.
But Jeff, aren't you also saying that once the special investigator turns in the report, that you're also making a decision on how to go forward, right?
Well, what we're doing is, the only decision we're making is that when we're going to expect the permit application to come in, to be quite honest, we're not even making a decision on that. The architect or the special inspector that submits the report to us is going to clearly say, if it says first floor decking must be shored up immediately. Well, I have to say, all right, I'm expecting them to do emergency shoring and they're going to submit a permit for that really quickly. I'll have a particular file for that. If they say this has to be done within 3 months, okay, I'm expecting this to be completed within 3 months. Because they're going to lay out in order of importance based on major and critical, and I know you go back to Surfside, but you're also looking at an issue that was written up and said, hey, this is a problem 3 years ago, and they just sat on it.
Right, because it wasn't viewed as a real
Right.
problem of potential collapse.
But what we're doing is we're making sure that they follow through on those items that are found out by the
Through the
engineer.
permitting process. Is really what it comes down to. that we
It's going to come
expect
down to based on the report.
Initiate permits. And I'm just wondering how much the urgency would be affected when you get clear direction that says, this is not just a problem. It's not just, you can take the next 2, 3, 4 months to resolve. Hey, this is a serious problem in health, safety, and welfare as stated in the whereas.
That's what the engineer is responsible to do, not.
I guess I don't see it in writing. That's definitive.
All right, but it doesn't have to be in writing that definitive, because after this Surfside collapse, which by the way, as I understand it, was an anomaly based on a ton of different things, not any one thing. No inspector is going to put their livelihood on the line by not pointing out things that they know has to be done, because otherwise they're going to get sued.
5 years from now, they're going to forget about it.
No, they
It's a whole
won't.
different world. We're looking
They're
at something
all
that's
going to
gonna last
err on the
time.
safe side, just as John was saying.
Right. So it will self-police in effect.
Of course it will. What else you got, John?
If you can trust that, I think the rest of it is fine. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. It's just this whole concept of really being able to convey a sense of urgency and criticality for the problems identified, and not have to rely on you all to rely on a permitting process to, affect the fixes, as much as an alert that comes straight out, clear as a bell, black and white, pass fail. But anyways, I made my points.
Point is clear.
Understood.
Okay, my friend. Next.
First, I start off with two questions. If we go to 105.16,
What page?
2,
Ooh, that's close to the beginning.
it's
105.
0.16 and it starts with C. I want to know what A and B are. Because on C2, you reference paragraph A. And since I don't know what paragraph A is, I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
I'm gonna take a stab at it. Section 2 above references the Florida Building Code. So 105.16 is a subsection in the building code, and there must be an A and B in that code. Is that right, Glenn?
So I could run and grab that.
That's a very good point, though.
So who's got a computer and wants to look that up real quick?
Yeah, how do you look? So what am I looking up?
You're looking for the
It's our administrative amendments.
2020 edition of the Florida Building Code.
However, this is specific to the Highland Beach amendments to chapter 1. This
Oh,
wouldn't be,
thank you.
this wouldn't be straight out of the Florida
Okay.
Building Code. It would be close. But it would
Isn't
be
that the
our,
section that we can make our
Yeah,
own
so help-
amendments or additions to it?
a
All right,
local
so-
building.
That they
So-
leave it open for the local building?
All right, so help Natasha look this up,
Yeah,
or are
what
you
if-
looking it up now?
So I'm reading it out of the building code, but it's got to, like Jeff says, pretty close. A local enforcing agency and any local building code administrator, inspector, other official or entity may not require as a condition of issuance of a 1 or 2 family residential building permit, the inspection of any portion of a building structure or real property that is not directly impacted by the construction, erection, alteration, modification, repair, or demolition of the building structure or real property for which the permit is sought. That is A.
Okay, but that, if I just
Okay.
understand what you just read, that talks about a single-family
Right,
home,
Mhm.
which is not a threshold building.
So B would be.
right.
Citing a
So that was
violation of
A,
the observed
and then
plain
there's
view.
B, and then there's C.
Yeah, but,
So C comes to
yeah, but in C, we're referencing
A.
paragraph A, which doesn't apply to any of our threshold buildings because
Fair.
none of them are single-family homes.
For which the permit is sought in accordance with the prohibition in paragraph A. So we don't even know what the prohibition is, let alone
Single family and
it's
two-family
single-family
homes.
units.
So we can do it on these threshold buildings. We just can't go into a residential building and look around and say, wow, that's a problem. We can only go to the single family for the identified building permit items.
But that this is talking about inspecting a non-adjacent portion. And if it's,
I would,
it seemed to
Why
me
do I
that
back
A
up?
only applies
think
to
you're right.
single-family homes.
This says citing in violation inadvertently observed in plain view during ordinary course of inspection conducted in accordance with the prohibition in paragraph A.
to be honest, it looks like it's verbatim from the Florida Building Code. This is.
Yeah, but it appears
It's
because
verbatim
we're
right here.
talking about threshold buildings.
The only change that was made was number 5, I believe. I think 5 was the only thing that was changed.
Okay, so
Okay,
5 is
so
conducting-
you're looking at something that may not be applicable because it's only, we added number 5 in 110 or
Yep.
in 116. Number 5 was added. The rest of that is standard out of the Florida Building Code.
Yeah. So basically giving ourselves the ability to do a recertification program. That's it. The rest of it is verbatim from the Florida Building Code.
So maybe your question goes back to a different organizing body.
Well, and I also want to know what Florida statute 933.20-933.30 is,
Can't help it.
it says inspecting any portion of a building, structure, or real property pursuant to an inspection warrant issued in accordance with. Well, I don't know.
It's the legal method required to obtain the warrant. That's in the Florida statutes. It's what we have to go through to legally obtain a warrant. But they're just referencing a state statute for that.
Okay, let's go to 5.
That's the addition.
Yeah, we're not going to be conducting inspections until somebody gets a permit and we're going in to inspect after they've done the work that the permit is for. So I think it should just be requiring inspection of existing buildings in connection with recertification requirements, not conducting or requiring.
Could you please point to me exactly where you're at again?
Yes, okay, on the red line copy, page 3 at
Oh,
the very
3.
top.
That was mine.
Yeah,
I had the same question.
because we were very clear that we're not doing these inspections
We're going to
initially.
require them.
Right, we will be inspecting them the same way we would any building project, which is they get a permit, they do the work, we go and inspect the work,
Right.
and it's handled exactly the same way as anything else would be handled, whether it's a kitchen remodel or whatever. So we're not conducting,
Well,
The investigation.
yeah, we're not, we're only inspecting after the fact, basically.
once there's a permit pulled, so you just want to separate that.
Yeah, because.
So we're just going to
it's-
eliminate conducting.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
eliminate conducting. You're requiring the inspection in connection with a recertification. And then, yeah, when they say we've done the work, come in and look at it, that's when you are going to conduct an inspection, but it's a different inspection.
It is a different inspection. It's technically part of that process because we wouldn't have been out there doing it, but I understand it makes more sense to eliminate that.
Because we don't really have to talk about what's done in the ordinary course of getting a permit and doing some work, because that applies all across. Unless we just want to put in a section that says, you know, all those building codes that apply to permitting and inspection of work apply here as well. Okay, let's go down the page a little bit to 110.9, the red line section. I have no idea what that means. And why, actually, I guess why we need it.
I don't know why the definition of building official was added to this. I didn't add it. I'm actually thought that we're
No,
working with,
yes, I
Len on
don't.
this.
I have a big question mark there.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, you didn't add this?
No, I didn't add this.
So what's he adding this without
was
your
aware.
knowledge?
We have a ghostwriter.
I mean, this is not something I would have asked for. Yes, but
Well, it
we,
looks like Len was working without her.
we did, but
Well, if this was added and Commissioner David doesn't know about it, then he's working by himself. And that's not acceptable.
well, in any event,
But let me
let's
finish.
take it out.
Excuse me, let me finish, please.
Okay.
Totally unacceptable. Will you have a conversation with him, please? Thank you. Now, do you want this in here or not?
Not,
Take it out, please. Unless Jeff thinks it needs. Jeff, your opinion?
no, I was under the impression that you did want to add
a definition of
the
building
definition of threshold
inspector?
building, which was added as
Yeah.
far as the definition of
No, we're on building official.
Building
we
official, I'm
Not
not aware of that. It wasn't in my
Building age,
notes.
Owner, threshold, yes, those we want. I don't think we
Okay,
need a
remove it.
definition of building official.
And it was because of building official being defined that I said, well, why wouldn't you define a special investigator? That was the point.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Yeah.
that
yeah, no, I don't.
you were against it.
If I gave Len the impression that I wanted that, I apologize, Len, but I did not want that.
Okay. Is threshold building the way you wanted it?
Yeah, threshold building is fine because he didn't just mention the Florida statute. He gave a little bit of an explanation of
Right.
what it's about,
Okay. Now,
which
Jeff, this is the first time you're seeing threshold building defined. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I read it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm on page 4, letter D. And it's the last sentence. The building official retains the authority set forth in section 116 to declare a structure, building, or an electrical, gas, mechanical, or plumbing system as unsafe in accordance with the criteria set forth in that section. Don't you always have the right to declare something unsafe? I mean, I don't know why we need that.
You haven't seen this either.
No, I wrote new down on that. I didn't.
Well, but the point,
The same document.
Well-
The concern is why are things added that weren't discussed?
Okay, well, I can actually answer that. And because unsafe in accordance with the criteria as set forth in this section, this is the section that was added specifically for the recertification.
Okay, but wouldn't those requirements be the same regardless? If something is unsafe, it's unsafe, whether they're doing a recertification inspection or any kind of inspection.
Well, it's a little bit of redundancy to clarify a point, but as long, I agree with you. I think that you're right. I think that it's probably unnecessary. I don't have an issue with it because it's just reiterating something that is already here, but it's now specifically applying it to this section because for me to declare a building unsafe, if it's, a lot of it has to do with my right to enter, my right of entry, which is a whole other issue. My right of entry, when you have a building permit, is very clearly defined. My right of entry, when you don't have a building permit, is a little harder. So this might be just making my access a little bit, but it's going to be based on a report anyway.
Right,
So
I don't
it's
know
gonna be
that
based on a
it
report.
does because the state gives you the right to go in to a building that is deemed unsafe. That you,
Or
yeah,
we need to investigate to
Or-
determine
right.
whether it's unsafe.
right.
yeah. See,
So I don't think we need that last sentence at all.
well, wait a minute. If the building official retains the authority in this section because they received a document from an engineer, right?
But he doesn't have to, that's the point. They don't have to retain authority. They have the authority. They're not giving it up. Nothing in this section gives up the authority to do that.
But the point is that once a certification has failed, you know, that they got a dangerous report, then the building official now has the authority, but he still has to declare the structure unsafe. And again, because I didn't know this was red line, I was reading it not being red line. I looked at this and I said, well, why are we looking to the building official to decide that or declare that it's unsafe or whatever? That should really come from the special investigator.
That's why I'm saying we don't need that sentence.
I'm agreeing with you.
You two are agreeing.
I am.
Go ahead. Jeff.
So if I receive a report that is very negative with a significant amount of structural defects, and I call the engineer and I say, hey, and we have a discussion and we both agree that this place shouldn't be occupied.
Yeah, but wait a minute, even before you make that call, you're now making your own judgment on whether this is good or bad. When it should be clear right up front in that report from the special investigator, where it shouldn't be where you make a subjective decision, which I think is the problem here. If it is viewed that the building official makes a subjective a decision on whether a building is safe or not, or whatever the problems are, then it takes it out of what the special investigator was supposed to do in the first place. Does that not make sense?
John, you're not getting past Phil.
Yeah, you're not getting past fail. And I think that, I don't think it's necessary, because I think if there's any building that's in imminent danger of any part of it collapsing, it's not a subjective opinion.
No.
It's going to be based on what the special inspector's subjective opinion, and then he's just acting on that subjective opinion,
correct.
not making one himself.
So
Total agreement.
I would like to clarify this with council. And the reason why I'm saying this is that section 110.9 does not exist in the Florida Building Code. This is what we're adding. Okay.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with issuing permits. It has everything to do with the recertification program.
Yep.
And I believe the purpose of that being in there is to tie the two together, just basically saying, although this has nothing to do with the building permit process, the building official still has the ability to act under 116, just like he would under a permitting process. So maybe you should have a conversation with Len, and maybe there's a
Maybe-
legal reason why he put that there.
All right, but maybe we should word it in such a way that it points out that this is in addition to inspections during a permitting process. If the special inspector's report objectively indicates that there is a major failure of this building, that you have the right to go in and inspect.
I agree. That's the point. That is the key point.
So that you're not making the subjective decision, the inspector is making the subjective decision.
An objective decision based on engineering facts and science, not on subjective decisions by a building official that I can sue because he didn't make the
Well,
same.
except you can't.
It's where we've been all along.
But it's not here.
It is there.
Okay.
So every time, John, Commissioner Shoemaker, that I've made a decision to declare a building unsafe, that was structurally unsafe, it was because I consulted with an engineer in the past, every single time.
Right.
There was, except once when it was already partially collapsed.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say,
Well, that's an easy call.
yeah, that's easy. But I'm trying to say in more difficult situations, where they are using a special investigator, we should rely on their objective scientific engineering report that says you got a problem. And then it's not a matter of your,
Again, and if the
Declaring
report
it.
tells us that it's
Right.
unsafe,
then it's a.
I'm the one who has to declare it, not the engineer.
Right.
He doesn't have the authority to make everybody leave
Okay,
the building. I do.
I was
And that's why
reading
they have
the-
to be tied together.
I was reading declare as decide. You decided to declare. Now, if you're not deciding, you're just saying, okay, the special investigator said this, so now I'm going to declare it based on that. That's one thing versus you making the decision as a building official. And that's all I'm trying to clarify here is who's making the decision?
They're going to make the decision. I'm the one who has to actually physically go
Right.
out there
And that's cool.
and shut things down and throw people out.
Right,
God forbid.
Yeah,
right. God forbid, but yes.
it's been there,
And so
done.
then the point would be, based upon the special investigator's report, you can then issue whether a declaration or whatever. I'm just trying to
No,
differentiate between the two.
So what is the concern with extra language? If it ties the two together, because we're adding a whole new program, just wanted to make sure that the building official has a role in this new program. Is there a concern?
Yeah, I think maybe instead of just putting it that way, that we have
You're saying that it's based
lead-in.
on a report
Right.
only?
Right, have a lead in saying, based on the special inspector's report, it is determined that the building is unsafe. Then the building official has the right to go in and declare it unsafe.
Well, wait a minute.
Because the building, special inspector can't do that. He doesn't have the authority to do that.
I think we've gone too far here. The only concern that I heard, and by the way, I had this noted also, and the note I have next to it is redundant, which you two have already decided it's redundant. But there's no problem with it being redundant. So I don't see why you can't just leave it. What's wrong with just leaving it alone?
Well, my other thought process with this is it's already in the Florida Building Code. It already has that. And
Right.
if 110.9 becomes part of it, that's already part of it anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
if we're
why.
being redundant on existing language, we can't have it different in two different places to either remove it and just, but I believe, again, the purpose of it being there was to tie that section for recertification into the Florida Building Code permitting
Yeah,
process.
as soon as you said that, in my mind, I said, good idea, leave it,
Mayor,
move on.
Mayor,
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I believe at the past meeting, it was Commissioner Shoemaker who said, do we need a list of definitions of our terms as many ordinances have? And I'm wondering if this came from that. I remember that discussion.
I remember it, and some of those were done. I don't think this.
Yeah,
would be.
that- I
Just
don't
throwing
think
it out
that-
as a.
I don't think that's a definition,
Yeah, but
that it's a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's fine.
I mean, you guys are the ones that are debating it, but it seems to me as though it reinforces it and the redundancy is not a problem. I would move
I'm
on.
not wedded to taking it out. It's,
Yeah,
I
you would.
just-
Okay,
okay.
let's move on then. Leave it in.
okay, this is just a question really. Page 5, under B, small I. It says a report prepared by a certified special inspector of threshold buildings. And then parentheses, it says a professional structural engineer or architect registered in the state of Florida. But don't we want somebody who's certified in the state of Florida as opposed to registered?
When they're registered, they're licensed in the state of Florida.
Okay, that was just a point of clarification. Okay, I have one other note, which is on page 9.
Can I just, for the sake of time,
Sure.
back up to page 7? Because the ones you're hitting, some of those were mine anyways, so back on page 7, first paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down starts with these methods.
Mhm.
It says these methods shall include, but not limited to. By saying shall include, that means they must be included.
But he's also saying there may be other things that need to be added to that.
Yes, but shall include says they have to be included. And we're not, now we're back to telling them what they have to do and how they have to do it. Now we're comfortable with telling them what things have to be done, but not the method that they have to do it in.
Change the word to should instead of shall.
No, we don't want to tell people how to do it.
Well, I don't think we are. The report, where we're saying is the report, you have to tell us what you did in the report, how you did the inspection. I think that's how I'm interpreting it.
Okay, let me back up then. I could be wrong. So we go back to the town is not mandating any particular inspection method. However, report shall discuss the use or non-use
Of standard.
of the standard structural inspection methods and the reasoning behind their use or non-use. These methods shall include.
Shall might be a little.
I don't read
strong.
it that way.
I would say maybe may, because you said you're not mandating, so I would
I like
probably
may.
loosen it up a little bit if you're not. gonna
Change the word
mandate.
shall to may, I'm comfortable. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
How about pass fail? Comfortable?
no.
are you comfortable with may instead of
Yes,
shall?
I'm fine.
Okay, so we're all in.
And actually, Commissioner Shoemaker, I kind of lost that battle because I wanted to be safe or unsafe, but it's very difficult to find an engineering firm willing to state
Yeah.
that. So I already lost this battle on another committee.
I mean, I don't mean to be offensive to engineers, but I've been around enough to know that they mealy mouth and they don't make definitive statements sometimes because they don't want to be held committed to it and all that. That's what bugs me.
So would they
Okay.
put in the report imminent danger? Would that be a term that they would use?
Would you repeat that? please?
Imminent danger, is that a term that they would use in the report if there's a condition that would?
I can't answer for them. One of the things that they were willing to utilize to say was with one of the engineers that came to one of the meetings was habitable or not, not habitable.
Or I guess I'm just wondering if you've heard feedback, okay, so maybe I could see maybe why they wouldn't say habitable, but couldn't they identify something that is?
They didn't do it at Surfside, as an example. I mean, it was obvious, and I hate to use it, Mayor,
Right,
but they didn't use imminent danger of
Right.
collapse
right,
over the course of years. They
right,
would use mealy mouth words,
Right.
wishy-washy, yeah, it's a problem, it's a danger,
Right.
nothing's, definitive.
Jeff, I have
Okay.
suggestion question as a practical measure. If you see something in a report that you would like clarified, why can't you pick up the phone and call the inspector?
Easily. That's all the time on a
Right.
daily basis.
So then that would satisfy. The inspector's not going to tell him, oh, it's great if it's going to fall down.
It leaves him off the hook.
All right, let's keep going.
But yeah, okay. So my last thing is
Page.
9.
page 9B, appeals. And actually, all that I really would like is that in the letter that you send denying rejecting the report, I think you should have a sentence in there telling them what their right to appeal your final decision is.
I honestly, to me, that just goes without saying.
Yeah, I know.
I think
but-
from a legal standpoint, we have to give them a method to either appeal.
So you would have that in the
Yeah,
letter that
they
you
have to
send
have
out?
without, yeah, if I don't
Okay.
give layout due process, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I have no problem with that. So then that was my last.
Can I ask Commissioner David, did you have any comments about wanting a penalty if they don't follow the rules? You had brought it up last time.
Yeah, I do think there has to be some penalty or otherwise there's no impetus to do it. We just haven't come up with quite what the penalty is going to be yet. And I don't know. I don't even have an idea of what we should do.
Can we hold that for the last piece, once we get through all this and then bring it back up?
Sure.
Okay. Peg?
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of things. On the handout on page 2, I'm just wondering when you say on item C2, inspecting a non-adjacent portion of a building, structure, real property that is directly impacted by the construction, erosion, et cetera. I'm just wondering what is exactly a non-adjacent portion of a building?
Garage?
And that's what I'm wondering, garage or is what pool area, pool cabana? I just
It
wondered.
could be accessories,
could
any
be.
accessory. Accessory structure, cabana, garage. I don't think we have any detached garages here.
Clubhouse, beach house.
Yeah, we do have detached garage.
Yeah, we do.
I have one.
Are there?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, my building has one.
Several condos have them across the street on A1A.
But how
my
would that be
knowledge.
directly impacted? If it's a freestanding garage, how would
No, that's what I'm
an
wondering
issue with
exactly how
the
this,
foundation in the building be
Oh, it
directly
wouldn't be.
impacted?
It
No,
wouldn't
they would
impact
not.
that.
They would
but
definitely not be. You're right.
It could
So
impact
it
electrical.
says impacted. That non-impacting a non-adjacent.
They would
building.
not be. No, you're right.
So as such, I just wondered, what about, say, a 3-story garage that is not directly tied to a building? Is there any means of or reason to inspect them?
Oh,
Well,
Sure.
we have
I-
a separate
so-
independent garage, right? Non-adjacent.
But it's
But it-
not a
but-
residence, so
But-
does this
but
apply?
Inside the garage is a generator that's
Mm-hmm.
electrically powering the towers. So that would be an electrical issue that would be part of this report. We're
That's
doing
what I'm
both Structural
wondering.
and electrical.
So would that be covered because it's not adjacent immediately to the building? Some of them are across the street and so forth.
well, I know.
No,
that
well,
the inspector we hired is going to do not only the garage, but the townhouses that are connected to our tower that are on the other side, so that they're there. Let them look at everything.
Right, but I don't, that's what I'm asking, is that if this covers such a setup.
It covers threshold buildings as defined, and the section that you're pointing out is already in the Florida Building Code. This is nothing that we've amended or changed. This is stuff, this is verbiage that is specific
Right, I
already in the
understand.
Florida Building Code. So the only buildings that are going to be inspected are actual buildings that are defined as a threshold building. If there is a cabana or a separate restroom building that's a 1-story, it's a separate structure, it's not going to get inspected as part of this at all. It only the actual threshold building itself will be, not any of its other, areas that by themselves don't meet the definition of a threshold building.
Understood. But do we need to factor that in? I don't know. Just asking.
Why would we care about that?
I'm just
I don't think
asking.
we care about a cabana or
A
any-
parking garage.
not if it's not attached.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yep.
I don't know. I wanted to throw that out. Okay. Do we have or do we need a checklist of exactly what items? I know we have it listed here in the, where is it? The section we just discussed. The items that will be shall change to may should be looked at, but is there such a thing as a checklist? Rebar, balconies, caulking, that sort of thing? Or are you just leaving it up to the inspector?
Well, we're going to leave it up to the engineering firm, but I believe once this is solidified, we're going to have administratively, we're going to have paperwork that we're going to be able to provide to help guide them, whether it's a summary, an easier breakdown. But we're really going to, I personally want to point them always directly to the ordinance so that they're familiar with the ordinance. But we can always have from an administrative standpoint, we can always come up with different forms to provide.
Yeah, the major items are detailed in here. We read them
Yes,
off at the
Right,
last
I know,
meeting.
that's what I'm saying,
So-
but I didn't know if we're going to have a real checklist to do list.
I mean, that's
just
the
wondered.
big stuff.
what the-
Remember, we're looking for structural soundness,
I
not,
understand.
not a leak here or there.
No, I understand. And originally I wondered if the electrical was necessary, and I kind of ran that around in my head, like, you take your car in for an oil change and they say, oh, your motor mounts are bad or your steering columns. But it's interesting because I ran it by a friend of mine who works in Broward, and has several municipalities. And he said, that's a great idea. He said, why not? So then I wondered, what does the electrical inspection say? What would it cost as we are, requiring it be part of this? Just what would be a ballpark figure for an electrical inspection? Do we know?
I can give you the number.
Yes, sir.
My building is 17 stories, has 122 apartments, and my quote is $6,500.
For how many apartments?
122.
Okay.
But I
I'm
mean,
just
that's
looking.
just so you have a sense of the size of the
Yeah, that's,
building.
mhm.
It's a little larger than average, but clearly
Okay.
not the biggest. But the inspector doesn't go into every apartment by
Oh,
any
I
means,
understand.
you know.
It's the main component,
Yeah.
the main switch. I
Yeah,
understand.
what
I
you
just
see
was looking
detailed
for
in
a
here.
figure.
So that, I mean, they quoted us 7,000, we got them down to 6,500.
Okay, got it. And Jeff, do you foresee any building actually becoming so involved with say, rebuilding or in very bad shape that it would broach the 50% rebuild point? Do we have any buildings which are really in a dastardly shape? I just wondered, just off the cuff.
Most buildings are pretty well taken care of. I do have a particular building that I have concern based on a report from a contractor that was drilling through the concrete and some other issues and little past history with the building. I think they're going to be very few and far between, but some of the much older buildings on the north end may have some issues, but I only have one in my mind right now that I'm actually extremely concerned about.
Okay, well, that's sort of
Or
good news
concerned
anyway, right? That it's not more than one. All righty, and then last question, what, hypothetically speaking, what happens if a condo board or homeowner association just does not or will not or cannot afford repairs or claim that they cannot? Then what happens?
Well, we have to go through our process with code enforcement to probably force them to do it legally. And if they still can't afford it, I guess it depends on the condition of the building and how far, if it's deemed unsafe, then we would have to have them vacate the building in the worst case scenario. But I'm, you know, there's a time with every building and where you have to decide whether it's worth continuing or rebuilding, like replacing it. You know, everything has a shelf life. Everything has a shelf life.
Especially here. Understood. Thank you very much. That's it for me. My colleagues covered several other questions I had. Thank you.
Let me follow up on your question a little bit before we turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. No problem. Thank you, Joe.
There are a number of different scenarios if they, quote, can't afford it. There are a lot of different ways to finance the repairs. The first analysis, obviously, is where Jeff was thinking. I could read your mind there for a second, only because you and I had talked about it a number of times. You got to look at the economics on the building. Whether or not the owners can afford it or not, the first question becomes, is it worthwhile economically to put that much money into the building? If it is worthwhile, then there are things that we here in the town can do to help them with financing. You know, we have relationships with the banks, et cetera. So there's lots of things we can do from that aspect. If none of that works and it's just not worth putting that much money into the building, as Jeff was saying, buildings have a shelf life, I guess, I don't know what the right term is. So the building has to come down. Then we have to look at it. We, the commission, has to take a look at the property itself because they can only put so many units on it under the new codes. So the property value, the land value is a big question in terms of, you know, how much these people can get for the land. And they'll all be upside down. So, you know, they may think that their property, their unit might, they think it's worth $300,000, just throwing a number out. But the reality is they're only going to get 100,000 and they're walking away with huge hits because the developer can only put a handful of townhomes in there because of height restriction and density restrictions. So we would have to then take a look and say, do we want to change, you know, the code on all this? Well, then the question becomes, if we do, are we playing favoritism for these people, etc.? So it's a big, big subject that we have to give a lot of thought to.
And we had previously discussed the possibility of allowing them to rebuild based on what is there now, not going higher, not going wider, but based on what's there so that they don't have a huge loss.
It becomes, do we want to let the new developer do that, or do we want to let the current owners do that? I mean, there's just a lot of questions. I'm not throwing out any answers or anything, but God forbid we get to the point where the owners have to tear it down. A lot of things we have to think about, that's all.
Got it. Thank you. Just wanted to raise that point. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, it's real. Okay. Natasha.
I just had one thing. I had been looking at since Boca is doing something similar, I was looking at their ordinance and the discussions that they had. And one thing that they have in their ordinance is they specifically say the reports that the city received in connection with the building recertification, that it shall be available to public, consistent with the Public Records Act. I don't think we specifically mentioned whether or not the reports that you receive are public or not. So I guess, do we need a specific item like Boca has included to say that the reports that you receive are public, or?
No,
I think anything that is turned into the town becomes part of the public record.
she's just asking, do we need the statement?
I don't think we need the statement because
Why would Boca put something like that in there, just to be?
Oh. is it
Because they have three
necessary?
attorneys.
Our attorney says, no, it's not necessary.
So what would happen if there was an individual who did want to know, want a copy of those reports, and the only way they could get it was through the town? How would they?
Go to the
about
clerk's
it?
office. They go to the clerk's office and file a records request, and we'll
Mhm.
process. That would be easy for us. That gets processed immediately, just about. Yeah.
Okay, so any report that you receive
With public
is
record.
public record, and any individual interested in getting a copy would just come to the town and make a public records request.
For a
and they
small
would.
fee.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's
No.
a fee?
No,
Well, we won't charge them if it's a PDF that we could email them, but if they need multiple printed copies and stuff like, then there's a charge.
Okay.
but we
okay.
have those charges set out in our fee schedule.
Yes.
So I just think that's important for people to realize that they have that ability to get those reports, because I think that would also help in enforcing any, findings that are conveyed. Even if they don't say unsafe or safe, an individual living in that building who gets a hold of that report and is not comfortable with that report, that's just another way to enforce taking action on the results of a
Or if
report.
you live in a building and you can't get a copy of the report that was submitted to your building about your building, you have a whole different set of
Well,
issues.
I could see someone maybe they did get the report, but they just want to see what the town has, or,
yeah.
it's just
To
something,
confirm
just as a double check. I could see a buyer of a building wanting to get that information, not relying on the seller to provide the report, but wanting to go to the building. I mean, I can think of a lot of
Yeah.
different scenarios. So I just wanted to make sure that it is available for people to get that. Okay.
100% automatically by default, by state statute, it's available.
Okay. That's it for me.
Sound like a realtor.
I I think that it goes a long way towards what Commissioner Shoemaker was saying too. If, individuals of the unit owner took it upon themselves to review that report and they found it to be unsafe, I think that helps to make sure that, things
Yep,
get done.
Absolutely, no question about it. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, well, all of my notes have been covered, so I don't need to go through the document anymore. Two quick things. One, thank you for that piece.
No.
What I was holding up was the new schedule of how they're all going to go out by building. I'm total in support of it, no questions about it. Looks good to me. The fact that you're going to be sending 2 per month, I think is perfect. Unfortunately, I have found that many of our residents don't keep up on what we're doing here at the commission level. As much as we send letters out, every month something goes out, whether it's a letter from a commissioner or it's the manager's note that goes out, they still don't stay on top of what we're doing here. So this letter that you're going to send with the ordinance is going to be news to most of them. So I would suggest that you also make a phone call. Explain to them that it's going in the mail,
Yeah.
and explain to them,
Heads up.
what's happening, what we're doing, why, etc.
Especially the first two.
Well, kind of every month. It's unfortunately, it's 2 more calls you got to make. But I think it'll go a long way. Plus, it's a real kind of town-friendly thing to do. And also, they'll now know who you are. So if they have questions down the road, nice to have a voice to it. Okay, so if you would include that in your to-do list, that would be great.
And I think that people might be expecting the structural side of all this, but I think, like you said, the electrical side, it might be
Yeah.
a bit of a surprise that people are not expecting. And, I would expect that to come up in your conversations, like electrical, really?
Yeah,
And,
I mean, your explanation
Right.
I guess it was last week, or
Right.
last meeting. I mean,
right.
you got to do electrical.
Yeah.
My God forbid you have a fire and the sprinklers go off and they can't turn the electric off.
Mayor?
Yep.
With the electrical, does it include the fire alarm system for buildings?
You're asking the wrong one. I defer.
Does the electrical inspection include fire alarms for buildings?
It does, but it actually doesn't need to because Delray Fire and our future fire department has to do an annual test anyway on the fire alarm system.
Understood. Thank you.
There you
Just
go.
checking on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
But also, I mean, I know there are a few people who are asking, fine, what do we got to do electrical for? I mean, Broward has electrical, Dade has electrical. I believe that the new Boca one has electrical. I mean, they all have electrical. So and there's got to be a good reason why they have electrical.
And what we put together through the county, it also has electrical.
Well, there you have it. So we would be unique not having electrical as well. But your explanation was rather convincing. I thought. Okay,
People die.
It's called people die without it. Okay, last was, let's go back to penalty that we wanted to discuss.
Yeah,
Turn it over to you.
to be honest, I have no idea, but we have to do something.
Okay,
And
so there's 2 things on it, I guess. One is if they don't turn in the report on a timely basis.
right,
And then 2 is if they don't do the work.
right. It would have to be a 2-tiered
Okay,
scenario because we need to make sure that the whole purpose of this is to find out what work needs to be done. And if you don't do the work that you find out about, there should be a penalty for that.
yes. Well, start with first one. If they don't turn the report in, I guess we send them to code enforcement.
We could send it to code enforcement and decide what tier this is going to be on, whether it's going to be on the $50 a day or the $250 a day tier.
Okay. Are we comfortable with that?
Is that what
it's
you
there for.
recommend?
Well-
What is your recommendation, I guess, is what my,
Honestly, coming from anything less than $250 a day
Noise.
potential penalty is not a big deal to anyone. So I think something like that would accumulate. Plus, by the time they go in front of the board and all this happens, most people don't end up having to pay anything anyway, to be quite honest with you, the way things work with the current system we have with a
Yeah.
board. They really have to go out of their way to eventually have to pay that. And then the board can also decide to lower, or maybe a special magistrate, could always reduce. And I've had that happen in other states where the magistrate says, I know it's a $17,000 fine. We're going to knock it down to $6,000.
Should we put a reminder in? A tickler? We don't have it in 9 months. Should we send a reminder out to them? I mean, it's more administrative work for you. No, they get 12 months to get their work in. If we don't get it in 6 months or in 8 months, should we send a reminder saying,
Could do
hey,
that.
you only got 4 months left?
Yeah,
They can have a change of the board, they can have a change of the management,
Sure.
the
I think that's a
manager.
good
Yeah, I think 8 months, 4 months should be sufficient to get
The other thing, I have 4 months left.
right.
that makes sense.
And then if they can show that they hired somebody,
Right.
but they can't start for
Right.
Yeah, I
a
mean, if
month,
somebody
and so
comes,
then they apply for an extension.
yeah, if somebody comes
And-
back to Jeff,
right.
say, hey, I'm the new manager here, I just got this, what's it all about? Jeff will figure out whether to work.
But
with it or
what
not.
do other towns do? Miami, or, I mean, do you have any other benchmarks that you can?
The people know when they're due and there's no proactivity. The initial notification, then you're supposed to know when you have to do it and they keep track of it.
And
They're not babysitting.
Penalties? No? Anything?
I'm not familiar with all of the penalties with the different municipalities.
I think Boca only has 180 days, don't they?
They
Yeah,
changed
that's-
it. They
they
made
did,
it,
okay.
they said, instead of the 180 days, they recognize that it really depends. So they are requiring that they submit a plan and then they have to go according to that plan. So they're
Okay.
leaving it open-ended from that perspective, but I didn't hear them talk about penalties. I didn't know. It seemed like a lot of their discussion was they were going to kind of see how it goes, that they recognized that a lot of things were in development. And I didn't hear what they were doing about penalties. I didn't know if that was something that they were maybe deferring a little bit. They're going to build up a whole department and all that. So maybe they were taking more of a wait and see approach.
Yeah, they really rushed to get it out. And it's
Right.
more of a work in progress. I
Right.
guess.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think listen, we're a small town.
Right.
We're here to help,
Right.
not to hinder.
Right.
So I think a tickler is a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's do it.
think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Please
for
do.
this number of buildings,
So
I
we
think
agreed, I think
that's
8 months.
8 months.
8 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 8
should
months
be
now.
good.
All right, good. All right, now, what happens then? They get the report in on a timely basis. They do have issues that have to be dealt with, and they don't deal with them on the time that they're supposed to. Now, what do we do?
So they have the ability to request an extension with reason for the building official to either approve or disapprove. If it's because they send the report and they've done nothing because maybe they can't afford to, or they don't want to spend the money, then that's a whole other issue.
Okay,
And-
let's just call it negligence.
Yeah, if they
you
want to
know.
be straightforward negligent, so
Yeah, you just never hear from them again.
right, right, because the bid to do the work was 1.8 million as a hypothetical. You can fine us all day long. It's going to be cheaper than us paying 1.8 million. All right. So if the report had items that had a timeline, then if the items aren't done within that timeline, then we can start discussing shutting the building down. And that's probably the biggest threat, bigger than any
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But as far as not even starting the work from the day it was supposed to be started or completed, again, we can just go right back to our daily fines, unless we get to the point where there are issues that force us to actually shut a building down, which hopefully will never, ever, ever happen.
Well, I would guess that if the report from a qualified engineer says that you got problems with these columns and the columns have to be dealt with in the next 12 months. Now you've got a report says they got to take care of the columns in 12 months.
Mhm.
12 months are up, they haven't taken the columns, then you've got no choice but to close them down. I mean, why would you not close them down then? They would probably rush out, get another report saying, no, the columns are okay, you got another 12 months, but so maybe we don't have to really think about penalties because we have a date certain from the report. Am I wrong?
I think that makes sense. And then if we think we need to change it, we can modify as we go.
Yeah, so I guess we don't need to talk about that.
I think so.
Leave it be.
I think that
Okay,
I would agree with that.
we're comfortable?
Yeah, I think a wait and see might work to some extent. I think most buildings will comply. They'll get their reports in, they'll do the repairs that are necessary. Let's see how many don't,
Right,
and if we can encourage them
right.
in some fashion
Sure.
to get it done.
Okay, and Jeff, if you need us to develop some kind of a penalty with you, you know where we are.
Not a problem.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay, I think we're set. Marshall, do you need anything else from us to go to?
Well, it's first read, so we'll need approval of the first read. If you're comfortable In so doing, you would identify the removal of the word conducting from section 2, which is C5, and removal of the definition of building official. Those are the marked changes that I have. And changing shall to may on page 7. So 3 identified changes from the first read could be addressed with this and shown in the second read.
Did we change architect registered to licensed? Or we left
Left it.
registered?
Left it.
Okay. Okay, good. Do we need to put the code enforcement, that they go to code enforcement into this or no?
No, we would address that probably with a separate, because we'd make it either a class 1, 2, or 3, most likely it's a class 3, which we would identify and do a slight amendment to section 2-173 civil penalties, and we'd identify this as a class 3, and then all those provisions would prevail and go to the
Right.
code. We just identify it, because I didn't see any other, like, anything else we develop would be considered a class what, so we may just call it class 3.
Okay, all right, we need a motion then.
I move that we accept the ordinance of the town of Highland Beach amending the administrative amendments to the 7th, 2020 edition of Florida Building Code to provide for reinspection and recertification of existing threshold buildings, providing for the repeal of all ordinance in conflict, providing for severability and codification, and providing for an effective date with the corrections as noted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need a roll
Do we need a
call
roll
on
call?
this one?
I don't think so. It's the first
You
read.
need it on the second read.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will
Okay.
schedule the second read for November 16th. Is that comfortable with everyone?
What's wrong with the 9th?
I'm learning to judge the time you need at agendas, so I'm trying to space out work a little bit.
Oh, okay,
So, I mean, it's only 1 week difference. It's an
Oh, yeah,
extra
fine.
7 days, and
gotcha.
with the election and stuff,
No problem.
the clerk's office will probably be a little distracted for a couple days. So.
Does that impact, like, I know his first report's supposed to go out January.
No,
Does
it'll be
that
fine, because
impact- It's fine.
we'll have the effective date in there, so we'll be good to go. Just it's a 7 days from the 9th. It's a second meeting
Okay.
in November.
And just for your information, I had read that into the record, the ordinance. So all you had to do was say A8. Okay, moving on. Consent agenda is none, unfinished business. Continued discussion on the introduction to revised ordinance regarding right-of-way can be found on page 34.
All right. Right away.
Ingrid is up there, so we will turn it over to Ingrid.
Okay, good afternoon. You have the ordinance before you. It has been revised since the last time you reviewed it, which was on August 17, 2021. I've gone ahead and referenced in the agenda memorandum the changes that was directed by the commission. The first one was to revise the definition of swale, which is on page 41 of your packets, to include a reference that that a swale can store and or convey. That language was added. In addition, per the commission's direction, dome-shaped buttons were removed from the list of improvements permitted in the public right-of-way. So again, the commission had requested that the planning board review and consider the ordinance. And on September 30th, the planning board did review it. They did recommend approval. They did provide 2 conditions. The first condition was that there be a provision with regards to appealing a denial of a right-of-way permit. This new language is provided in the ordinance in bold on pages 45 and 46 of your packets. And it basically allows the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to hear an appeal regarding a right-of-way permit. Now, keep in mind on the issue of appeals, and I referenced this in the agenda memorandum, back on December 15th of 2020, if the commission recalls, staff had proposed standalone right-of-way permitting regulations. And what I mean by standalone is we were providing or proposing new code sections that comprehensively addressed right-of-way permitting. Now, the commission decided not to go down that path with standalone regulations, and instead you asked to have staff look at existing code, right, amend accordingly in an effort to protect right-of-ways, including swales. The planning board also made a recommendation to incorporate a more comprehensive definition of swale. Now, they did not provide any draft language in that recommendation, but prior to them making the recommendation, they did discuss they did talk about swale locations, and they were looking at the definition of swales, which is on page 41 of the packets again. They were talking about whether if you don't have a depressed linear area, which is part of that definition of swale, then you technically don't have a swale, which is correct. Now, given there are several areas of the town where there are no swales within the right-of-way, there are certain areas of the town where there are swales in the right-of-way. That said, the dimension and location of a swale can vary townwide. So rather than elaborate on the definition of swale, possibly adding a dimension or some sort of threshold or what have you, staff feels a more resourceful approach, and I again call this out in the agenda memorandum, would be to include in the town's construction site management handbook a swale cross-section or detail. We could have like a vegetative swale cross-section. I've looked into these already, or a driveway swale cross-section. This would be, I think, a more appropriate way to deal with swale construction, as I said, rather than amend the definition. And again, I've provided in your agenda memorandum a whole history of this ordinance. I'm sure some of you recollect some of these meetings. Just to reemphasize, so the improvements that are permitted in the proposed ordinance without a right-of-way permit, these are non-public improvements, right? Personal improvements, for lack of a better word. And really the goal here is to provide the protection of the infrastructure. I gave a short recap of that on page 35 of your packets. I'm happy to address any questions that you might have.
John, do you want to go last? Because this has been yours, baby, right along. So you
Okay.
can do the summation.
Very good.
Bev?
Okay. First, if you go to page 42 and 43, it talks about news racks. It was my understanding that we banned all news racks. So why don't we get rid of these 7 different things?
Right. We were, I do recall that. We were waiting for you, because that's really a separate item that would come before the board as a separate amendment to the code. So if this does get approved, then we were going to come forward with that separate ordinance to delete the reference to news racks and all those provisions in the code, but it would really be outside the scope of this ordinance. That's
Oh,
what-
why?
Procedural,
I
huh?
know.
Okay, but it's in here.
You know, bureaucracy.
It's
Okay, we got to go
included.
one step at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, and does the state define swale anyplace?
It
Because
may.
if they do,
Yeah.
then why can't we use that definition as our definition? Because I doubt that they have location with, I mean, they're not going to get into specifics like that because, as you say, it varies from
Yeah.
place to place. And if that's the official state definition, I don't think we can go wrong using it.
Well, I could
What-
look
what-
into that. I could look into state statutes, but we have a lot of definitions
Mhm.
in the code, right?
Yeah.
That maybe the town's own writing may or may not be consistent with, definitions that may be in Florida statute.
Personally, I didn't have a
Yeah.
problem with the
Yeah.
definition, the way you put it in.
Yeah.
So
And if you
I
recall,
didn't either.
I didn't
yeah,
thought
the
it was
commission,
an
you all
issue.
had added some language, right, to kind of add to what was, we already have that swell definition's been in the code. We
Mhm.
just went ahead and put some revised language, and that was discussed with the commission last time.
Yeah, I was very comfortable
Yeah.
with the
Yeah,
language. It was-
I don't have I know the planning board asked for something and I think it's fine personally.
Yeah, I think the details is really in a cross-section or a swell detail. The definition, I think if you get too specific when you have such diversity when it comes to swales, can be a bit problematic. So really, I think the cross-section or detail for swales may be a better approach to it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that most times what you do is draw up your ordinance or your statute, and you wait and see what the problems are down the road, and then you amend it to fix those problems. You don't go looking for them up front.
That's often how things happen.
And I'm fine with this ordinance as you've drafted it.
Done. Okay, Peg?
Yes, thanks. I'm not sure how to approach this, but in viewing this after the meeting that we had with FDOT Secretary O'Reilly and our staff, I don't think this ordinance works anymore. And the reason is it is in conflict in several areas with the FDOT plans. And we have the FDOT drainage evaluation report from 2015 that we are working on. And FDOT has agreed to make a lot, if not all of the repairs. And what they will be repairing is with these manners of swale and drainage. It's flumes, an under drain, an indented gravel, sod, turf, vegetation, yard drain, French drain, porous concrete, exfiltration. What will not be done in the future is the outfall pipe. And I want to suggest a possible source of that blue-green algae. That blue-green algae sample was taken 5 houses away from the outfall pipe in the Bellito neighborhood, and that outfall pipe drains A1A in an area of roadway and roadside water, which could include oil, gasoline, yard, fertilizer, and so forth, all of which contributes to the growth of algae. I know Jeff Remus was in that meeting, and these swales that will be repaired will by FDOT at their expense greatly. There's some question about it, them doing in front of single family homes. For us to construct and revise the ordinance now is sort of a futile gesture in the fact that they're going to come in at 2 to 3 year time. They're currently surveying our town, and a lot of what we might be permitting will not be permitted at that time or will necessitate some removal. And so I don't know that we should be having I don't know what to do here, because I don't know that we should have our Board of Adjustments and Appeals or our staff approve any variances in the swale ordinance or in FDOT's plans when in 2 to 3 years it might have to be removed, other than necessity such as a driveway or a mailbox. I do have an extensive report which Marshall has that he'll be getting off to the commission on that meeting. And again, this all came out of independent phone calls and letters by our state senator and our state rep. I did not initiate those, but they did so upon the failed approach for these repairs.
Commissioner, oh, go ahead.
So it's okay. I'm just wondering if we could and should reevaluate this once the data comes from Marshall to you all on that FDOT meeting. And I don't know. Yes, ma'am. Did you want to ask me?
Yes. On this FDOT report, is this going to be a public effort, public improvements all along A1A?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I think that's probably the key here.
Okay.
In the agenda memorandum, I call out that what is permitted in the right-of-way without a right-of-way permit are non-public improvements. So maybe what we do in the ordinance, we actually add the word non-public, because a FDOT project is a public project. That would not trigger right-of-way permit. So maybe it's an issue of just adding that phrase non-public on page 38. Where it says at the bottom, it shall be unlawful to construct non-public improvements. So any type of R project or anything like that, it's a public project, wouldn't trigger right-of-way permit. Again, we have that provision on the top of page 39, which talks about that the permit required, or actually in the bottom of 38, top of 39, the permit required by the section is in addition to any permit that is required for the Florida Department of Transportation, the town's issuance of a right-of-way permit shall neither impair FDOT's regulatory authority, so on and so forth. But again, if we clarify that it's non-public, then that might be a way to address it. I'm not familiar with the report that you're
Sure.
referencing, so.
I understand. It seems like our reports are working alternately and they need to be merged. I know that anything that is included in a right of way right now has a good chance of being removed in the very near future. And our boards and our staff and our commission, we need to be together on this. If I could ask Mr. Remus to come up too, because, and perhaps address it, because I believe he was in the meetings with us. I hate to be permitting people in town to start improving their swale area and then gee whiz, in 2 years, sorry, we have to retract that permit. It's a lot of this stuff may have to come out. And Jeff, if I could ask you to sort of provide your input from the meetings as well. I'd like to have us and town and residents and FDOT work cooperatively, jointly, so that we can get this right. I just wondered if you could perhaps give your feelings for how we're moving forward on this, so that the right-of-way permit, the ordinance and what we are going to be doing in the next year to 3 is cohesive. If you could give me your opinions.
Well, one of the concerns from FDOT was that there is a lot of things that were already done that are contributing to problems, such as hedges literally right alongside the right of way. And I know that they have plans, and the Representative Caruso was very adamant that we start enforcing and getting some of that stuff removed, which that's a whole other issue that we have to discuss down the road. But with that being said, that there are some things that are going to have to change. I believe in the right-of-way permit, anything that's going to be done on an FDOT right-of-way has to have FDOT approval anyway. So that's essentially going to be, it won't conflict, because anything that an owner wants to do on A1A, they're going to have to get FDOT approval anyway. So I don't believe that this is going to be a conflict, because we are going to require that they have FDOT approval first, just like we do now when we have new construction.
Understood. I just wondered if we could maybe provide our data from the meeting to the commission and the other staff members who were there, and bring this back at a later time and maybe coordinate a joint effort on this. Would that be an idea? And then secondly, I'm just strongly suggested to Marshall earlier this week that the commission, and Marshall being the point man, we probably need to stay sort of heavily involved as this unfolds, so that we go down the right path with this RRR this time around.
Oh, can I comment here for a minute?
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and also for the great work that's being done here. Okay. But a couple of things. One, FDOT in the past has made promises or commitments or plans that haven't come to fruition. We haven't had Caruso behind it though, so we're way ahead of the game here. But this spells out very specifically that the only things that can be done is underground sprinkler systems, mailboxes, ground cover, and replacement of existing landscaping, but not existing landscaping that's located within the swale, so not be replaced. So these aren't big deals. You're not going to tell somebody they can't put their mailbox back. I mean, so anything else requires permitting. And as Jeff said, requires permitting also from FDOT.
Yes.
I would propose that to start with, anybody that requests a permit that we want to give them, we tell them in writing, there's an FDOT plan coming along, and you may have to remove it. So right away, they know up front that they could be looking at 2 years of use on this thing or 3 years of use, and it may go bye then. So they may want to rethink making that investment. So there's no surprises. But if we don't move forward on this, we continue then to have no controls over our swales.
I understand that. And that's why I'm saying if we could somehow coordinate and merge the ideologies here.
Well,
For
but-
example, I'm not sure we should permit existing landscaping to be reinstalled. Some of it is not indigenous. Some of it is
No.
actually contributing to
Peggy,
the
it
flooding.
says, excuse me, it says
Yeah.
existing landscaping located within a swale shall not be replaced.
Right, I understand that. But there are some things within the swales that are close to the swales. There are some landscaping close that by the time 3 years comes by, they're going to be in the swale. This came about
Well,
over and
then
over.
We would then have to tell them to remove it from the swale.
Okay, that
But
would work
that's an
then.
enforcement.
All
thing.
right, I
That doesn't
understand.
affect this.
I understand.
Also, anything in here can be changed at any time.
Mhm.
So as work with FDOT moves along, anything in here that negatively affects that, we as a commission can change with one meeting.
Understand. Then I wonder, sir, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we can build in some kind of a procedure here so that variances and decisions regarding the roadways and swales on A1A, the side streets are not controlled by FDOT, so that they might come to the commission and the town manager for review until such a time we get going. Because having stated these opinions by FDOT that they had promised these things to happen, I don't see how they can retract that. I mean, we're on their schedule. We have asked them to move up the schedule possibly, but I'm just wondering, I think that we need to stay on top of this as a fully comprehensive commission and town manager, rather than having decisions be made elsewhere.
For A1A only.
Yes, sir.
I would agree with that.
So that, I mean,
I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
so that
A1A only.
we're all
Yeah, but-
together working on this, not, and our boards, that's great, let them continue in their work, but then it comes perhaps to the commission until this project is completed. I
But,
don't think our elected officials are going to let this go by. I really don't.
On A1A, not only would they have to get permits from us, but they'd have to get permits from FDOT, or they wouldn't be allowed to do anything anyway.
Right.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I think if we notify them that there is this project coming and there is a good likelihood that whatever they put in will have to be removed,
Right, I understand.
and that make them sign the letter so that they know that they've
Okay.
gotten
idea.
it.
Okay, that might, that,
All right,
yeah, that might work
procedure,
too.
what would the procedure be to establish that change?
For the commission to be the,
For the
Approval
commission
body?
to have to be the approval body only for A1A.
we would probably just write it in to the,
Can I just add something? Because
Please.
Commissioner Gossett Simon mentioned variances to a swale. There's no variance for a swale because the code doesn't provide a dimensional requirement. So there's no such thing as a variance for a swale.
Okay, I think.
So I just want to be sure we're on the same
I
page.
I think
swale
here's the goal,
improvements.
if I can
Sorry.
put, and help me out on this,
Yes, sir.
that when there is new construction,
Mhm.
or if somebody is attempting to put any product
Mhm.
into a swale where they would need a permit,
Right.
we, the commission, would like to be involved.
Okay.
So I don't know what the proper terminology would be here, but we want to take it away temporarily until the FDOT A1A project is completed.
Yes, sir. That would be a big advantage.
Okay, does
So
that
that
cover
we-
what you're suggesting?
Yes, sir. I believe
Is-
that would work.
if I could, just to give
Yeah.
more clarification, because we talked about this. On A1A, if you're gonna spend any sizable amount of money on a right-of-way improvement, you have to go to FDOT and you have to come to the commission now anyway to get a modification to the 2017 maintenance permit. So you can't just do it in the commission. You all have to approve it after a planning board makes a recommendation. So big big
It's already in
stuff,
place.
big stuff is not the issue. It's gonna be littler stuff, smaller stuff is the issue at hand.
Okay, well, I think what Peggy is suggesting, we'd like to be involved in all of it.
Yes, sir. I think it would be an advantage to the whole town so that this works and that we show good faith to FDOT that we are on board and we are working with them.
Okay,
I
I
would hate to
understand
go-
your strategy. I buy it.
Yes, sir. And then if Marshall could provide you all with the notes and things that I'd put forth and Mr. Remus was involved and Teresa was there, then we can work together, all of us, upfront publicly and get this done correctly first time around.
So the-
As an example, Mayor, a single-family home has an entire front yard fence in the swale and shrubbery, which is now overgrown way into the right-of-way. And again, before Mr. Remus, Ingrid, Marshall were here, these permits were not followed through correctly in the past in all times. And that brings us to where we are now, and we're having to sort of correct on the fly.
Right.
So we all recognize this.
Commissioner
Yes, ma'am.
Gossett-Simon,
Yes, ma'am.
this example you just gave with a fence, where is that property located? Is that on South Ocean Boulevard?
Yes,
Is it-
ma'am. It is approximately the Rothenberg home. It's approximately west and south of that, the west side of A1A. And actually,
There's a lot of stuff in the right of way.
yes, there is. I don't need to pick on one home, but I mean,
There's a lot in there and that's just over time.
Yeah,
things-
it's
as you-
just-
yep.
30 years of this being not properly permitted. And frankly, the FDOT guys were sort of laughing like, haha, look at this, look at this. They had a good attitude, as did our staff.
There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot
There
of it.
is.
So with this ordinance, instead of the public works director issuing the permit, you guys want to issue the permit for a period of time until that 3R project. So you want like the sunset provision that for an initial period of time, you are all going to vote on this permit
Only for A1A.
only for A1A. I just want to make sure I have an idea so I can talk with Ingrid to come up with some language, but for a period of time.
Yeah.
Sunsetting on, February or July of 25 and then
I don't know that you can put a date in because you have to gear it towards the
Right.
3R.
And until we decide not to.
Right.
or you could leave the ordinance in place and you have a matching resolution whereby you usurp the power to do it and say, for this period of time, the town commission shall serve as the public works director. That way your ordinance, so when that time is done, your ordinance is clean to resume a normal process with a new right of way.
You figure out. the
Figured it out?
administrative.
Okay, I got it.
Okay,
Peggy,
thank
Yes,
you.
by the way, there is something in here that says that if you remove invasive materials, you cannot replace it with anything except non-invasive materials.
Yes, that's great. Yes, ma'am. I
So,
remember.
so it
reading
is
that.
in here already. That's taken
Yeah,
care of.
okay, great.
Okay,
Yes, Mayor, that really
Thanks.
helps a lot. Thank you very
you
much.
bet. Tasha,
I agree with everything that's been said. I don't have anything additional.
okay, I'm with you. John, over to you.
Well, I have to say that I'm not that experienced with FDOT's history of making promises. Commissioner Gossett-Simon, do you think that FDOT will deliver something in the way of a triple R program in the next 2 years, really?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I don't see that they can be off the hook now. Senator Polsky called me one day. I was at Whole Foods and she said, I'm doing a Zoom call with Secretary of the entire state, Thibault. Can you all be on? Would you like to join in? It was like 4:35 in the afternoon. I said, yep. Just put me on. I did not initiate it. She was upset about our approach failing. It was like 2 weeks after it was failed. Caruso got on board. He wrote the governor a letter in June. I think Marshall has copies of all that. And that's what transpired and evolved into this meeting where they tried to set it up since June. And this was the first time we could get staff of everyone all involved. And I think the heat is on. I honestly do. I don't see
Okay.
that they can backtrack now. We have public meetings. That was a notice public meeting. We have minutes. I don't see how they can backtrack on
I
this.
just wanted to clarify that.
And I'm with you, understand, and that's why we're where we are. Like, why is it going to take 10 years to get this done?
Exactly.
That's where everybody's coming from.
I mean, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet on 2 years.
Well,
Okay,
I'm a
but
betting woman
hear
and
what
I
you're
am
saying.
betting on it.
okay.
But
and
I
that-
understand your concern and I think they got the picture.
But in the ordinance we're talking about, they're going to have a permit anyway. And that's when we can alert them. And so I don't see the problem. I think that this is fine the way it is, and we adjust as needed based upon what FDOT really does. End of story.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm good.
Okay, I think we're ready. Oops, got a question there.
I got a game plan, so.
Go ahead. Shoot.
So what the ordinance, everyone seems comfortable with, but we're gonna have a resolution that's gonna give the permitting authority to the commission for a period of time on A1A because of necessitated by the 3R project. That's how we're gonna roll. And that way, the ordinance structure itself looks good, because when
Yeah.
A1A is done, it goes back to staff and we know exactly what you can or can't do on a good set of plans, yada, yada, yada. So.
Yeah, I don't know that that is even required to be put into this ordinance. Isn't that a separate issue?
I'm saying we keep the ordinance the way it
Yeah, as
is.
is.
We're just
We're
gonna
in
have a
agreement.
resolution giving the permit
Okay.
authority to the commission on everything on A1A.
We're in agreement.
Okay,
Okay, we need a motion then to pass this. This is the final.
Okay,
This is the
it's not
final.
a first read, so it's not a final read either. We haven't even read it as one, so I'll bring it back with the
Oh.
whole
oh,
package.
okay.
So it's easy, just the whole thing. Glenn's gonna draft up that resolution I'm talking. I'll bring it all back together as one whole package.
On the 9th.
You really want the 9th? Okay, I'll do it on the 9th.
I just want to get this, just want to get this stuff done.
So the
Do we
resolution
already
is,
have
it
a
looks
lot on
good.
the night?
Let's move
Okay,
So
on.
I have an opportunity to write a resolution you'll like.
Okay, so Mr. Chairperson, John, you chair this. On the 9th, it's going to get passed.
Fine.
Okay, thank
Got
you
it.
all.
Glenn, the 9th. Got it.
That's going to take about 5 minutes of our time, right?
And
Okay.
Marshall, if Mayor, if I could just make sure that if Marshall could get to the commission who might not have it, the drainage report, the Baxter Woodman stormwater best practices.
I just need
and-
your final.
And my final,
Your
I think
final
I sent you
review.
yesterday.
You did?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. I
just
believe
e-
so. If not, I'll send it
Just
right now.
scan them and email them, please.
Yes.
We don't need all the paper.
Then you all have it.
Oh, no, I
Great.
need paper.
I'll
Pardon?
print it.
You want hard copies? Hmm.
I'll give everybody electronic and then
And,
I'll print
and
those.
to add that FDOT wishes to come to a commission meeting in the near future, which in previous efforts with our town were denied by someone at the commission level unbeknownst to other commissioners. And therefore I want to say that that was really great.
Shame on them.
Yes, sir.
We would love to entertain them
Yes,
here.
sir. They will be here.
We'll
Come
have cake and
forthcoming.
coffee.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
And ice cream
No, I'm
and
serious.
popsicles.
I would love to have them here. That'd be great.
Yeah.
They are committed to coming in at the nearest available time.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for understanding these.
Okay. What's next here? New business? Oh, discussion of the charter review report. And we have the chair here. Would you like to join us at the podium, sir?
So as Mr. Donaldson comes up, I just wanted to let you know that today's meeting is not to vet every recommendation.
No.
I'm just trying to set up, how do you want to review these recommendations, add your additional recommendations, then pick dates for election. So what I'm going to throw out here is somewhat unique. Nothing that I read in the charter says it has to be placed on the next available election. So we have two coming up because if let's say you like all of these recommendations and then you add a couple more, we have what, 9, 10? That could be a real busy ballot and kind of turn off the voter. So the other thing you may want to strategize when we move forward are the ones that are more urgent in your minds or prioritized go in March, and a second set could go in that November election, and you could kind of spread that out, give yourself more time, because some of what I would guess are maybe lower priority ones probably need more explanation to the voters because they're a little bit more inside baseball, if you will, versus, I could see the charter spending being a bigger, hotter topic that people get right away and understand, where something on how we restructure the ordinance on the reporting of the police chief and the town clerk, it may take, it's more inside baseball that voters might be like, what is this? So I'm just throwing out options. If we want to hit March, end of December, we got to have final language. So we have a lot of talking to do.
We'll do it on the 9th.
This 9th, I guess we're going to come in the morning.
You
And,
you knew that was coming.
Yeah. So I didn't know if you guys want to think about special meetings on this. which might also help getting the availability of Mr. Donaldson and some of the other charter members, charter review board members, if it was their kind of language that they could also come in and participate and kind of allow us to focus solely on this rather than trying to push this in amongst all of our other agenda items. I think special meetings are probably appropriate,
Interesting idea.
Mhm.
That's a very interesting idea.
but yeah. So that's
Okay.
where I'll leave it.
Sir,
Barry Donaldson, 3700 South Ocean Boulevard. When I saw this coming up on the agenda, it's usually customary for a chair when there's some business to be here. So I thought I should put in an appearance.
we appreciate that. Thank
And
you.
it was just really, in case you had any general questions or anything, that is really it. I don't want to speak for the other members. The report kind of speaks for itself. And as Marshall indicated, certainly the committee would be pleased to interact with you in a public way if you feel that's needed. So I'm just here today as a matter of convenience for you.
Okay. First of all, thank you for serving. We very much appreciate it. I know it took a lot of your time. I do have a question. I watched most of your meetings and obviously they were very productive based on the results. But I didn't see any discussion on I didn't see a lot of discussion. There was some on what the committee thought was saleable to the electorate
Mhm.
as much as what they thought was best for the electorate.
Mhm.
So one can think that, an example was probably the best example is 10% of the combined budgets. Your group thought was the best to run this small business of ours. But they didn't spend time talking about what they thought the electorate would go for or would do. So do you have any comment on that? Any advice on that?
I would say my take on that, and you're correct. We did chat a bit about that, but I think the consensus of the group was that was frankly more of a political decision and went into an area that we weren't really charged with in terms of, gauging the feasibility. On that particular topic, and we struggled with that one, probably we spent more time on that particular element, I think, than any other element of the report. And getting to what we felt was a proper level, not necessarily acceptable, but a proper level to let that business operate was where we centered our attention. And we spent a lot of time getting input from Marshall and from the finance department on the likelihood of what was the scale of an expenditure that we might expect going forward,
Mhm.
given that the town is supporting its own water system, will be supporting its own fire department, already has a police department, and trying to project that 10 years into the future, what would be the appropriate baseline that we need to reach for. And that's how that discussion came about, and that level was eventually set.
Good answer. Okay, so you left the politics to us. Yeah, no, it's fair. No.
Absolutely. And I think quite appropriately.
I
Yes.
agree, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do agree with their approach that they shouldn't be considering whether or not the public's going to accept it or not. It should be what they truly believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
And I'm
I-
glad that's what you did. I'm really glad.
Yeah, there was a rational thought process in.
I'm not
recommended
disagreeing. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get a fix on it.
Yeah.
Why don't you keep going? You got other stuff?
No, I don't.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no. I mean, no, but I guess I felt strongly enough to chime in. Yeah.
All right. Peg, you got anything you want to ask or comment on?
Well, I listened to all those meetings driving north to Nashville. It's very entertaining.
Okay.
And I was impressed by everyone's efforts. I mean, really, the board did an amazing job at really hashing through. And I give them a lot of credit. I think possibly dividing the issues to one or two between two referendums might work because it's a lot of points. I'm not sure how the residents will take it. I don't know. There are those who pay attention quite closely to what we do. There are the middle ground people who sort of listen in, and others just want their water, streets, electric on, and dogs not caught in some dog catcher's truck. So
Okay, so how do you think we
we could
should
divide
approach
it up,
this?
would be great.
How do you think we should approach this? Evelyn?
I agree. I think we should split it up. We can't put all of this. And even if we think there may be other things that we want to put in, we can't do it all at once. It's got to
Right.
be in at least two sections, possibly even three, depending on how we.
So maybe we should, make sense, certainly, I agree with both of you. Well, maybe we should ask your group to come in and we just have a session only on the charter and talk with the charter committee about their thinking behind a few of these things. Start to develop our thinking on it, because you have to recognize that it's our role to accept or reject their recommendations, and then to add anything else we think is important. And by the way, we don't have to move forward on any of these. We can say that we're only going to move forward on two of these. The rest of the ideas, we're not going to move forward on. We're going to reject them. And now we only have two questions to go to the electorate on. So, I mean, we've got a lot of work to do here. But
Mayor,
it-
also, okay, sorry.
Pardon me? Okay, so it might be worthwhile taking up on your idea of sitting down with them and talking through these things. If we have questions on them, to me, they seem pretty straightforward. I personally don't have any questions at this point, but I'd like the opportunity to come up with a few. John, what do you think?
Well, I mean, in this kind of summary view, and I don't have really that much concern. I have two to pick out of these pages, two concerns. One clearly is the funding limit. And I'm surprised that you did go 10% of the combined operating and enterprise budgets. That's a big number. So then you could look at a lot of other options. I don't know, we could talk about those other options, and maybe it's a better time to do it with them here.
Right, but he gave us their rationale.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
we can accept that and buy that rationale or not. That's our job.
yeah. Well, and in fact, are you asking me to give feedback on, say,
No,
that feedback? I
no,
didn't think
I'm
so.
asking you if you think it's a good idea that we sit down with that
Without
committee.
question, I feel as though we need more feedback from them, even without, the political
Okay.
issue that's facing us.
All right, then we need to schedule that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we'll schedule that as a meeting.
Marshall? Is the enterprise fund spending limited to the limitations on the commission?
Mhm. Everybody, we're all set at the 350 for a single project or expansion of service, period,
For all fun.
all funds, regardless. So with that, with setting up special meetings, recognizing our timeline, it may be difficult to schedule both groups. But if we set a special meeting and extended an invite and did our best to get as many of the charter review boards so we can stay on the timeline, would
Yeah.
that be acceptable?
Sure, we might not have all commissioners, we might not have all people on the charter review, but at least it gives us an opportunity to have a discussion.
Sure.
That's all.
Sure.
And I would think, in my opinion, our goal should be to have a couple of questions for the first opportunity and then a couple of questions for the last. Now, a couple, don't take me, I don't mean just two. We might end up with 3 and 3, 3 and 4, or it might be 2 and 2, whatever we end up deciding to do.
So when can we meet?
Take a look.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I did want to add on that there were a few issues that the Charter Review Board did not elect to pursue that I would still enjoy hashing out with the full commission.
Well, we certainly have that
So,
opportunity.
Well, I would like to just make that
Mm-hmm.
note. There were things that happened in the past that I thought merited a hard look by us.
Well, the
So I'll
opportunity is
put-
there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You know, personally, I put a lot of weight in if the charter review board decided not to move forward on
Understand.
something.
Right.
To me, that's big.
Understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a real compelling reason.
So,
Okay.
I mean,
I'd like to do it sooner rather than later.
so like next Tuesday?
That would be great.
Is everybody
Monday or
available next
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
How does that look for you? Mr. Chairman?
26th.
That would be around 1:30.
If that works for you.
Sure.
That works for us. Oh, he's checking.
Yeah, that could be good. Get going and then get it a couple times in November, maybe one in December to approve it.
Yeah.
We could
What-
use the
what
last
was our-
commission meeting in December to approve the final language package
Yeah.
based on this stuff.
What was our deadline again? Back in the,
Lenelda and I believe, end of December, you're gonna have to have that language over to the supervisor of election. The final language, authorize the commission to change the charter, but, Glenn will put the final tweaks on how that format looks, but it's the end of December.
And you got holidays in between. So.
It's gonna be a little tight. That's why I said, don't feel crunched to one election if you need to hit the November one, because it's already scheduled. So we're not going to have to pay for a special election.
Yeah, I wonder if we should even prioritize, what we discuss, so that if
Possibility.
there's
Exactly.
something that, we really want for that next, we really hammer that.
That's a
Mhm.
good suggestion.
Because there's one of them on there that I think you all know which one it
Right.
is. That's going to involve a lot of time.
Right.
are you okay?
I'm available.
Okay, 26th, 1:30.
26, 1:30, Lenelda, special meeting. You see that smile? There it is.
It's gonna be a joint
And
meeting
we
with
can put a
the
couple
charter
of
review
people on
board.
Zoom.
It'll be a special commission meeting. We'll extend an invite to as many of the charter review board members that are available that want to attend. Some may not want to.
Yeah, they don't have to.
But
But
in
chairs-
person or Zoom, they could do both.
They can
Either
do
one.
Zoom.
Yeah, either one. Yeah.
Yeah, Zoom is fine.
I mean, and should we already kind of suggest what it is that we definitely want to talk about? Because
It's all we're going to talk
Maybe-
about is charter.
I know it's all we're going to talk about, but maybe we should talk about what we think right now is the highest priority for us to really focus on.
I mean, which of the recommendations?
Right,
Okay,
like,
well, there aren't really,
just, I don't know, maybe, I mean, not that we have to definitely stick to that one, but if we know for sure, the funding limit,
If you,
let's start with that one. Let's really dive deep into that one. And then, I don't know what else we can get to.
I don't know if everybody spent enough time doing that to
quite
prioritize right
honestly,
the second.
my opinion, I wouldn't waste time on the funding limit.
Or whatever it
You know.
is, whatever it is. I mean, the fire rescue, I don't know.
Yeah,
To me,
I
maybe
mean,
the fire rescue is the most important.
There aren't that many others.
There's five. There's five. I
Yeah,
there's
overstated
five.
when I said
We
nine.
handled
I
that in one
apologize.
meeting.
Right. I just think we should start on the one that we think might have the best, the one that maybe we want to have in March.
Okay,
Make sure we get through that. And then if we have time.
I think you got a very good idea. Let's see if we can identify that right now.
Right. I thought the fire rescue, but.
Term limits might be one.
I don't have a problem with the term.
If we're going to limit it to 3, I would go with funding limits, fire rescue, and terms of office.
Where, give me that again, please.
I would discuss funding limits, fire rescue protection, and terms of office first, and do the others.
Okay, I know I'm being redundant, but I don't know that we need to talk about the financials. He's given us their rationale already, and we're going to end up talking about how much we can sell. Okay, I mean, I hate to be
Right.
that absurd
No,
about
no,
it.
what
but
I was
what it comes
thinking.
down
Plus, you're
to.
saying that one's so obvious, it doesn't
It's
need
so
a lot of
obvious.
discussion.
Yeah,
Our
okay.
discussion is going to be,
Yeah,
how much can we convince them that, I mean, we know what we need. In my opinion, we need like $1.2 million-ish. Marshall, what do you think we need?
Boy, somewhere between the two, between 1.2 and 2. But I could say if we're going to base it on the premise of the fire, you want to be able for the ladder truck sometime in that 10-year period before the next charter review. So that 1.2 is probably about the number.
Okay, so I don't think we need to waste their time on that. I think we have to figure that out. That's my only point. You want to talk about it with them?
Oh,
I'm
no,
not
what I
opposed to
was
it.
thinking is those are the
What?
three I'd like to see
Get out of here.
on the March
Right,
ballot.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That's really
That's
what's
how I was
important, right, to hash
prioritizing
out
it.
what we
Well,
want on
okay,
the
then
mark.
let's do it. Let's put those three
Yeah.
on. Her point was.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
because we
to
got to
me
get
now.
through it before December,
Yeah.
Could we
so.
Okay.
repeat those, Mayor, please?
Yeah, let's repeat them.
Okay,
Okay.
funding limits, fire rescue protection, and terms of office.
Do we, are we limiting it to those three, or that's the starting point and we'll add on?
Starting point. If we have more time,
In case we
we'll
don't
go
get
on.
through it all.
Right, yep.
I just think we
Understood.
definitely need to tackle those.
Okay, so Linnell decided to give me this little gem. She says, maybe 12.3, we have to get that language to the supervisor of election. So she's going to double check with Wendy to make sure that that seems really early, but I know that she says 95 days is her new magic window, but let's see if she can't get us a couple more days in there.
Does that mean we should meet earlier than the 26th?
Oh, no, 26 will be good. I think
a week from now.
I just think it may lend itself that we may not get it kind of forces your decision that you may not get all 5, 8 questions, whatever it is that you want
Right,
by December 3rd. You may only get a couple.
right.
And that's why I'm glad you're prioritizing.
Yeah,
Maybe
let's
we start
focus.
there and then we know
Right.
that November we can pick up some more too.
Right.
And kind of have that inertia and continue to work through these things.
And the date of that is 3.
What, 12/3?
No, the date of the referendum itself.
You're talking about 2022?
Yeah.
It's March 8th.
March
8th.
8th. Ah, that's
Okay.
why. I think it was later in March. Okay. It's early. Okay.
It's always the second Tuesday.
Is it really?
Yes, in March.
Mayor,
Oh,
do we
so it's
want to
swearing in
add,
on the 23rd? I was
we
thinking
want
had
to add
March.
to that list then, since we're now being told that we're under a more of a tight deadline? Do we want to add 1 or 2 more things that we want to definitely tackle on next week?
We certainly can, but they won't. Well, I shouldn't say they won't. These are probably the 3 things that we'll have on the referendum.
Okay,
But the other, depending on how the meeting goes and how much time it takes, will probably continue on the list.
okay.
So if you want to put some things down for continued discussion, fine. What are they? You have some other ideas?
No, sir. No,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I could drum up 1 or 2, but I just thought, do we want to throw a few more on just so that we're all
I just don't
thinking
think
ahead
we'll
of
have
time?
time. I think we need to
Yeah.
focus on this.
Yeah,
to
we'll
make
get
sure we
these-
Get it in
I'm
December.
fine.
We'll get these fully discussed.
Yeah.
And if, we're done in 30 minutes, then
Right.
okay, we'll spend some more
Got it.
time on others.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, 26th, next Tuesday, 1:30. We're going
Yep.
for it.
Anything else?
No? Okay.
Okay. Back on the agenda. Approval of minutes from October 5th, page 117. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. See you next week. Anybody have any comments on the? Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple on page 119. The correct spelling of Sacco is SACC, like in cat O. Under 11A, just to make a correction.
Where is that?
Yes, sir. Page 119, 11A, new business.
11A. Okay,
It's a spelling correction.
got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And did we need, I don't know if this is politically correct or unnecessary, but did we need to refer to October 11th as Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples' Day. I had heard there were persons who wished to make that point in town.
We could recognize it as a dual holiday. 'Cause I don't know
Okay.
what the official ruling is.
Thank you.
I like
I just
Christopher
had heard
Columbus.
from several.
Don't you like
Residents.
Christopher Columbus?
No, I do. But I had heard from residents, so I'm trying to be accurate
Really?
to cover our town.
So
the
do you want me to
slash-
make that a correction on the agenda for Columbus
Just
Day?
bringing it up.
No.
No, because the agenda is what it was, so it's
Right.
got to stay the way it was. We can't
Correct.
make that change at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Let me see.
You had two fingers up.
I did. The other one's minor. It's a comma. It's okay. We let it go.
Bring it, shall we? So I can make the correction.
Well, all right. It's just under 12 town commission comments. It's fine. Leave it. That's good. Just one.
Okay, need a motion?
Thank you.
I move that we accept the minutes of October 5th as corrected.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Peg, for the corrections. Okay, moving on. Comments. John?
Comments. Okay. Come back. I'm pleased to report that having spent some time with Teresa, that we are continuing to make progress on the Veterans tab to the town website. Working with Pace Advertising, we're detailing the look and feel and the links and the whole concept of what we're trying to do to bring honor to our heroes of Highland Beach. So we are making progress, and I think we're getting much closer now. It's something that's real. The only other thing I would honestly say is that, Mayor, you got an apology lately, I've seen from our residents, and so did I. And I think what we really should feel good about is that we want criticism, we want positive comments, but we want to work as partners for the benefit of the town, not to create crises and conflicts and controversy and chaos, but through conversation, input, negative and positive, we come together in partnership. And I think we're getting close to that now with the most recent newsletter that we've all seen. And I think it speaks well of the editor. I appreciate his taking the time and wanting that partnership to be as positive and constructive as possible. Those are my comments.
Well, I want to formally thank all the members of the Charter Review Commission for the time that they put in, which was substantial. Otherwise, no, I'm talked out today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Although my wiener dog Rocky cannot vote, I have created a vest which he will be wearing throughout town that says yes in bright red letters.
That's cool.
And anyone else who has a dog who wishes to be decked out, I sew, and so let me know. Can't do hundreds of orders, but I can whip up a few more.
That's
Thank you.
great.
That's it.
Yeah, so Linelda and I met with the supervisor of elections. I got to meet Wendy Sartori Link, and I was very impressed by the facility and the operations. It seems to me that they're doing a great job. And I guess I would just want to remind everyone, if you vote by mail, you have to sign that ballot. And, that's critically important for you to do that. Also, I didn't know the signature that you use when you get your driver's license on that electronic pad is what is used to compare your signature on the ballot. And so if it is deemed that it doesn't match or whatever, potentially your ballot could be at risk of not being counted. So I did not know that. That was something new to me. And so I thought that was interesting. And I just wanted to encourage everyone to come out to the food truck event next week. I think they're really fun. I really enjoy meeting everyone. So I would just encourage everyone to come out. And of course, vote.
Yep. Thank you. Whoops.
You mind if I add on to the
No,
Vice Mayor?
please go right ahead.
Just want to encourage those residents who get a robocall or a letter from the supervisor of elections regarding your signature, please sign it and return it as soon as possible. Because there are some.
Okay. By the way, what is the deadline for mailbacks?
November 2nd, by 7 p.m.
Okay, got that, everybody out there? Okay, I too want to thank you again for all the hard work on all those meetings and corralling everybody and getting that report in for us. We very much appreciate it. I'm pretty well talked out also, so I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Do you have any words of wisdom for us? That's behind us. We've already moved on. Thank you. Marshall?
I wish I could say I was talked out. A few things. I've engaged our consultant from Raftalis. We're going to redo the water. So we're going to do an evaluation of the water sewer study stuff with the injection of the American Rescue dollars and based on revenues coming in. So I met with Robert and Mark earlier this week. They got a proposal to me just as we were meeting. So we'll get them in here to give you an update and to see what the effect of that extra 2 million does to those rate structures and if it should bring it down in the out years. So we're working on that. So that's getting going. I did have a meeting since our last commission meeting with the city manager of Delray, very smart gentleman, very nice, kind. We had a very good conversation. Following that, I did get our public records request that came in, probably 9,000 documents. So I am working through that. They've also, thank you, Glenn, have submitted their response and revised their budget for next year. Not sure I totally accept it, but it's in the right direction in the spirit of cooperation and moving in that direction. I will be reaching out to Mr. Moore, their city manager, because I did find, I probably went through 3,000 of the 9,000 documents, found some interesting items that were in there. Again, my big public records request was based on some assistance from Glenn looking to the collective bargaining process, where they really go through that and they spend a lot of time and a lot of stuff on Highland Beach budgets. And then I was able to find a document that says they have 63 firefighter paramedics for a total of X. You divide the two, there's your in-rank average. So I will hopefully be guiding them to, you know, you're way off on your firefighter paramedic charges. But again, their pension problems, you know, geez, it's pretty frightening. So we got some stuff back and I'll be giving you some progress and I will share the revisions that I got here. I'll email them over to you. But again, I'm going to follow up just on your behalf because you'll ask the same question that I did. So it'll come right up to you, be like, really, that's it? So we will work on that.
So does that mean the forensic audit can begin?
That's my request. I'm going to share this stuff over with Mr. Zucker. So see if it helps him, but he made an independent request, specifically the questions he felt he needed answered and wants them to independently respond to him. Because if it does go in a direction, which we hope it doesn't have to go to, he'll be an expert witness and he has to be able to issue his own opinion. Not that the town kind of gave me some of this stuff, he's got to go directly. So we're going to keep it clean for legal purposes. But I will get him these documents as well. So it might help him, especially with some of the stuff that I did find today that just kind of, their calculations weren't too far off with driver, paramedics, captains, firefighters. I don't know who I think they're those positions. I almost feel like are actuals. So I'll share that stuff. We got a response from the DEP for a grant, oddly enough. The one that we did put in on the fly before the deadline relates to A1A flooding and drainage to do the engineering details. So we've been selected for consideration, which means you got through phase one, you go into phase two. We'll answer all these questions on that. It was $100,000 grant request for which we were going to put in 25 of the 100. And basically what that is, as Commissioner Goss-Seidman, she's made a lot of great progress with FDOT and Mr. Caruso, but no one's ever designed any of it. So we potentially can have some state dollars to really get into the design to understand what are these drainage swales, flumes, French drains, what really can happen here. So if we get selected, at least we'll have some engineering, and maybe FDOT will give us the 25 grand match rather than us, or pull them in. Who knows? But we've moved along in the process. So that's good news. Again, our food truck event for the Food Truck for Fire next Thursday. Again, it's a good time for the people that I met at the last one that are new. Welcome home. They were very excited to be here. I saw a lot of smiling faces for the new people that live here. Ear to ear grins how excited they are to be here. So it's good to hopefully I'll meet some more folks. For the December 2nd, we're going to launch this out here. We're going to do a Mingle Jingle food truck in the place of our traditional light up the holiday. So we're going to do a holiday themed Mingle Jingle on the 2nd of December. Similar format, maybe more food trucks, coffee, maybe a few more things, improve the layout, maybe get some more mingling tables because we expect more. We're going to have the trolleys to pick folks up. So I would anticipate we'll get a full house. But we're going to do that kind of as a mix and keep it outside, separated, safe for those that maybe still have, with COVID and stuff, people are still a little reluctant to be in close quarters. This gives it a little bit more flexibility on the space, and they've been well received. Everyone seems to like them. They're fun. Commotion is higher, engaging each other. So we'll do that. And then we'll do the final touches to see if we want to do any other things. But, that's kind of the holiday concept. I don't know if we'll do a countdown and light up or not. Those little final details will work out, but it's going to be the 2nd. All the decorations will be up.
Timing?
By the 19th of November, we should have all the lights up. Usually they put them up after Veterans Day. Between Veterans Day and the 19th, we'll get the holiday lights up.
I'm sorry, late afternoon, evening?
I think we'll do a little bit longer. I think we said 5 to 7:30 to give us a little bit more time because that 2 hours does get compressed. And if we have the trolley, we may make it 5 to 8 just to give more time to move through the event. If you're waiting for a trolley and only so many people on it, this and that. But it's going to be more open housey. So there isn't like a formal program where you're going to sit for an hour and a half. It's just, as it says, mingle and jingle. We'll do some kid stuff too on the side, and it'd be good to get everybody back together and celebrate.
Yeah, and I wonder if the trolley will get more people there, because I wonder if now, like the parking situation, it's kind of hard. So maybe the trolley will get. even
And they
more
love
people.
the trolley.
And we
Yeah.
already had it reserved, so it's great. I have
Right.
other people asking for the trolley, so we've got it reserved. So, it's a good thing. I guess the one disappointment for some, the difficulty of getting the Boynton Beach Choir is quite difficult. So
Oh.
unfortunately, they won't be able to attend just because of logistics and school authorizations. And for now, it's off. So we'll, music, mingling, it'll be good. It'll be fun. Maybe it won't be so formal. We don't have to talk about fire the whole time, even though we probably will. It'll be a good holiday event.
Boca Highland has a chorus, doesn't it?
We could do carolers if I could find a group to do caroling.
Let's do a
but,
dancing
There we
girl.
go.
Other than that,
Chief, you got anything? No? Okay, a couple things that I had forgotten. First of all, question, the crosswalk down lights.
yes, got them.
Oh, great.
They're in stock. They're in the yard. They should, the contractor has promised to install by the end of the month.
Beautiful.
So right at the light switch time. When's daylight savings? Is it this weekend or the weekend after?
I think it's weekend.
the week after, hopefully we'll get a lot of those in. So that would be really helpful in the evening crossings.
Beautiful, thank you.
Mhm.
The letter that I told you all that we'd be sending out, that's at the mailers now. So they'll be running it off, putting that in the mail. November 2nd election. Do we want to make arrangements for a couple of us be there out front, on a rotation? We did like that idea. All right, nobody's too excited to sit there.
I'd
but,
rather not do
you know,
that.
You'd rather not?
Yeah, just because.
Oh, well,
I'll
you have the
right,
other obligation.
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't. Yeah.
I can't.
You period. No, you can't be there. But you can bring water and everything. No. So Marshall, can you arrange for a way to keep us shaded, a tent, a table? Thanks.
No.
We need some kind of sign.
Full
so
sun, hot
people-
spot.
So people know, commissioners ask questions, something. So, when we're
I don't
walking
think we have an
by,
issue.
when
We could
people
put
are
up a
walking by,
little-
they know who we are. No, right where they sign in. That's where we're gonna- we'll be signing them in. This is the vote yes table. No, we have to be outside, obviously, away
I
from.
will talk with Linelda to see, is there a designated spaces?
There's 150-foot buffer that they have to stay outside of that,
But if we were to set up a tent,
but you have to ask Father Horgan.
I'll
You have
ask
to get
him.
permission from Father Horgan. And I think in the past, I'm not sure if they brought their own table and chairs, but we will have to.
Yeah.
I will speak with him. Okay.
Now, there's an awning there. If we sitting under the, we can't be sitting out.
You can't.
In the past, they've all been down past the sidewalk. It's all been like the first row of the parking lot,
Gotcha.
which seems to be acceptable.
Right. And they will have a deputy there. There's a poll worker that's assigned to keep you outside of that buffer. So if she come at you, you have to move outside the buffer.
And we'll
Why don't
have
I-
a searchlight that's going up into the sky.
You want to work with Linelda on this, put it together? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I think we have to publicly notice it if more than if two or more of us are there, correct?
Yeah, okay. Fine.
You have to do a public notice.
Great, and got to put a
Wait,
schedule
wait.
together, so we know. No,
We'll
But
be
the
talking
fire is
about
town business. Is the fire
the fire
election?
Yeah.
when, no, not amongst ourselves. When a voter comes up to ask us a question, we'll fill them in on it.
If we have two or more people there, I'm pretty sure it has to be noticed, two or more commissioners at the same time. Unless we do shifts and not two people at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't think you want just one person sitting alone. It's going to be kind of boring. That's why I figured two of us at a time. So if we public notice it, that takes care of it. Is that correct? Yeah, so no big deal.
What would this public notice say?
It will pretty much say,
That commissioners are going to be standing
yeah,
together?
no, it would be you just saying there's a special election at the church. Two or more commission may be present
Oh, okay.
outside
That's fine,
on the
okay.
premises, just.
You got it,
very-
Linelda.
All right.
All
good.
right.
All right. All right. That's what I mean. What kind of notice is this?
And
Okay,
there's the
good.
notice.
Very, just putting them on notice.
So would you put a schedule together as well? Great. Okay, that takes care of everything I have. Anybody else for anything? Okay, it is 5:13. And we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Nice job, Barry.
Thank you.